we have other purchases to make next year as well.
I guess that it will also go up, everything keeps going up. Commissioner Atwood, you had your hand up, I believe.
Yeah, a couple things. So when the city uses this truck, isn't there a program that we have like, Kelly, I think I hit her. But when you take the truck out, we charge that department for hours of use, I do believe, and then that department gives it back into motor pool?
Yes.
Am I saying that correctly, or?
Yes, if I may respond. The sewer fund pays 100% for this vehicle. And that money has been set aside into the motor pool fund every year. Knowing that this vehicle, you know, the price has increased, and as well as, you know, sewer fund has to repay for repairs and the fuel that the motor fund has already paid for. In 25-26, the sewer fund is paying nearly $100,000 for this vehicle, for just that 1 year. So yes, that is, yes, the use of that vehicle has been recovered by the sewer fund to the motor pool. So motor pool has the funds to replace this vehicle at this time. And those proceeds from the vehicle will also go back into that fund. So every year, knowing the useful life, you know, we calculate the equipment rental rates. And you'll see this as a reoccurring theme as you go through every single department before we get into the meat and potatoes of the budget. Every department has an increase in equipment rental rates for 25-26. You know, equipment repairs are expensive, and vehicle prices are going up as well. And so that is all factored into those equipment rental rates.
And just to add on to that, the sewer fund is fairly well funded, so certainly that's breaking the bottom of the barrel there. And this is a hugely important piece of equipment for sewer emergencies.
The other thing I just found is, back, you might have to fact check me on this, but back in 18 when we bought it, it was $435,505. So just within that time frame, you can see how much the cost of the Vector has gone up just from then. So
Almost 200,000.
you gotta weigh, you know, cost now compared to increase later. The motor pool, that's for all vehicles, right? Or
Correct.
equipment, and equipment. Yeah. That's kind of all I had.
Just saying.
Okay. Commissioner Petrie?
You say that it's been on the CIP for a couple of years. Has it been wearing to the point that they knew they needed a new one already, if we just got it in 2018? Or did we get a lemon, or, I mean, I don't know how long they last. Was it a bad vehicle?
I certainly hope not. Roger, you know how long it's been on the CFP?
I do not, but I know it hasn't been a bad vehicle or anything like that. It's just, it's wearing, and it's not,
And so that's about how long they last, do you think, 6, 7 years?
yeah. To where there's still good money to get back out of it, to put back towards another one.
And one more question. We have 2 bids, and I'm wondering why we don't have 3, just because that's our policy. I did a little research myself, and there's several companies that sell these, so I just wondered why we didn't have 3, just for transparency reasons for
I
the
think it's
public.
because there's only 2 in Michigan, right?
Yeah, and some of those ones aren't really designed for the work that we're doing. There's lots of different back vehicles.
Ms. Hannah, did you have something?
Oh, no, nothing.
She said no.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Brady?
If I understand correctly, this is like an upgraded unit, like a more heavy-duty unit than the one that we had before?
No, I don't think it's necessarily heavier duty. One of the things we talked about was the specs with the auto lubing of the O-rings.
Okay, so just improved technology, but,
Yeah.
okay. I just wondered if that was part of the price increase over the couple of years.
Now, if you see the price of fire trucks as well, I mean, just some of these heavy-duty trucks just went through the roof, insane prices since COVID.
Any more questions? Does it come with any kind of a extended warranty or anything above and beyond the warranty that it comes with?
I don't believe so.
What is the warranty?
That I don't know for sure.
Commissioner
Yeah,
Bissell?
just a comment here. I know that City Manager Womack and Director of Public Works, Mr. Slusher, both said that these are really hardworking vehicles. And my comment is, for as much money as they cost, they sure should last more than 7 years. So who wants to buy it if we want to get rid of it? It would just be a question that I would have. I'm not opposed to getting it, I'm just saying it seems odd.
Is the dealer purchasing this vehicle from us? I know that Rob had an estimate of what he thought.
Yeah, he has an estimate of around 300,000. He expects it to go for more. He just put that number out there. We're going through not just gov deals, we're going through a couple different bidding places so we can get more what we have.
Okay, and if I recall, that estimate that Mr. Underhill had provided us was based on similar vehicle sales. So what those vehicles are going for right now. And again, him just knowing that the cost of the repairs that he's anticipating over the next couple of years, he feels that this is the best value for the city.
Okay. Commissioner Brady?
So I might understand that, like, the main decision maker on whether we keep or sell this vehicle and when its expected life is being reached is our master mechanic, Rob Underhill? Like, are we going, is there a, I know like wastewater treatment was asking at some point for a maintenance tracking program that would help to kind of go through that. Do we have that in place with the DPW, or with the motor pool? The mechanics aren't their own
They have
department, but.
Fleet Mate? Yes, they do have a software
Okay.
program that they track all the vehicles.
I mean, I know, if you take your
maintenance.
car to them, you guess, hey, what's the condition of this vehicle? The mechanic's opinion is the mechanic's opinion, right?
Well, so it's two-part though. It's
Yeah.
not just the, how much he anticipates there's gonna be increased maintenance in the future. It's also the work of the finance department to be able to find the funding in this current year,
Mhm.
After having been on CIP for a couple of years. So we have the money to do it, and according to them, it's the appropriate time to do it. As Mr. Atwood indicated, 7 years ago, it was 50% of the price. We wait another year, it could be another $50,000. I just don't see things getting cheaper in the near future. So if we want to delay it another year, now we know it's going to go 18%. I'm sorry, $18,000 instead of 3%. But then next year, is there going to be a tariff in place? Are we going to pay 50% more because of that?
I just would also argue, if we get 1 year of use out of a vehicle we didn't have to pay any money for, that could be potentially $100,000. I mean, every year we keep the vehicle has a value also.
Sure.
Madam Mayor?
Okay, go ahead.
Do we have an expected delivery time? Like if we were to order now?
About 10 to 12 months.
Okay, and are we pretty confident this is gonna make it 10 to 12 months? I mean,
The current vehicle?
The current vehicle?
Yeah, and if it didn't, we'd have to borrow it from somewhere because these are insanely important during a sewer emergency.
Can you talk to me more about borrowing from someone else? What does that mean? I mean,
We'd have to go on the open market, contact any surrounding communities that had a Vector truck and see if they'd let us borrow it.
that sounds expensive.
I don't think it's so much expensive as I'm not sure too many municipalities want you playing with their stuff. Because we've talked about that a lot, about doing local agreements to share some of this type of very expensive equipment. But, you know, my staff is great with their toys. I'm not sure everyone else's staff is great with the toys, you know. And they probably beat up on more than our people would.
I was gonna ask if I could borrow your car later.
My brand new, less than 2,000 miles on the vehicle, yeah, sure. It doesn't go fast enough for you to beat up on it.
So if we don't receive it for 10 to 12 months, and once we give if the commission gives the okay for this budget, do you pay half now? When do you pay the full amount?
When it is received, it is my understanding, they're not asking for a deposit, they're not asking for a prepayment. The city will pay for it once it's delivered.
I'd reiterate that it's coming from the sewer fund, and the sewer fund is fairly well funded.
Yes.
So this is not general fund dollars. And I can't think of another piece of equipment that is as important
More
as this vehicle
important.
is.
Right.
Except for maybe Mr. Slusher, but he's not a vehicle.
Okay, are we ready for a vote then? All those in favor of the motion, say yes.
I think it's a roll call.
Oh, yeah, money, right. Thank you.
Commissioner Atwood,
Yes.
Commissioner Brady,
Yes.
Commissioner Quisman,
Yes.
Commissioner Petrie,
Yes.
Commissioner Swindell.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion's carried. Good discussion.
And thank you for letting us put it on the agenda. Madam Mayor, have you gone through the public comments already? Seeing-
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did those.
So you're prepared to receive the budget workshop?
Yep, turn that over to you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm gonna start with the CIP book, if it's all the same to you guys, more interesting stuff. Budget tends to not change as much over the year. And I'm gonna start on page 12 of 174 in the CIP book. You know, Ms. Hannon here can go into every minute little detail of every cent that we're gonna spend, but I'd like to take a kind of a broader view of things. And I'd like to thank Ms. Hodge off the start. She puts this map together for us, I believe. It kind of shows where the dollars are being proposed for the capital improvement program each year. You're gonna see in the upper left-hand corner, 25-26 CIP totaling about $10 million, $10,407,000. You can see the different totals there underneath. Something I would note specifically is that local streets and major streets make up a huge portion of that proposed $10 million. I believe both administration and the city commission are on the same page that roads, local roads and major roads are a huge concern of our population, that we're doing the best we can to spend both our money and grant funding that we can to do some of the major concerns. Some of the major projects, not necessarily this year, but over the next couple of years, are going to include Genesee Street, Park Street, Pine Street, Nipissing Street, and First and Second Streets. From a long-term perspective, I think we're going to have a conversation about exactly how do we want to fund all these projects, because to a certain extent, we are drawing down on fund balance both in major and local. And I'm sure Mr. Atwood is going to find some money for us from the state, but meanwhile, I think we need to have a good local conversation about that. So, that being said, in the immediate year, I'll start on the left-hand side, public safety. Now you see that we have fire hoses and nozzles, $11,000. $25,000 for signage. I believe that's the last old-style sign that's out here in the community. It's gonna be a similar setup to what we just got done putting at the Parks and Rec Community Center. A little bit nicer, a little bit brighter, a little bit easier to read. Mr. Brady.
I'm just wondering how you're planning on tackling the projects, kind of, like, we're very high level at the map.
Sure.
You're planning on going back through all of the projects individually and taking comment on them then, or are we
I'm not gonna go through every single page here, but I certainly was intending on going through each of the major CIP items. If that's, we can address it anytime we want, though.
Okay, I don't want to get in too early, and I don't want to miss my chance either. I guess, well, can I ask you another question?
Please.
Okay, so thinking about special assessments and how much money we're going to have in order to spend. There's a higher conversation of that is, what's our fund balance? We are deficit spending this year, those kind of things. So I don't know if I was anticipating having maybe a little bit of that conversation first before we go through individual projects. I would almost look at it like, are we keeping every single project here? Is there a maybe pile? Is there a no pile? And I don't know, where we're all at with, what are we trying to accomplish out of this meeting right now?
Yeah, so I mean, just from a high-level perspective, we, on a yearly basis, update the capital improvement plan. We're 6 years out generally, and of course, different funds are funding their expected capital improvements differently, right? We have general fund, CIP items, we've got major streets, local streets, et cetera. Similar to what we just got done talking about with the Vector truck, we anticipate these things for a variety of reasons, such as anticipated grant money that's going to be coming in a particular year. For instance, the First and Second Street projects, you're going to save mobilization costs about 15% of the overall project cost if you do it at the same time. Similar with the Park and Pine project. Sometimes it's, the water or sewer underneath a road is in worse condition, and there's a variety of reasons, okay? So, all staff is doing is we're proposing to you the projects that we think are best accomplished in this year based upon the plans of the past, anticipated grant money, how they interwork with other projects we have going on. Most projects could probably be taken off, shuffled, moved to a different year. Not all of them, and there would be costs associated with doing so. Doesn't mean it can't be done, just you have to acknowledge the fact that maybe there's a reason why we proposed it this year versus next year.
Yeah, I guess maybe to refine my question, is everyone okay that we're deficit spending this year?
I'm comfortable with it. Matter of fact, I'll tell you, don't look at her while I say this. I think I'm less comfortable with it than Ms. Hannon is. I'm a fiscal conservative. Certainly have no intention of, putting us in anywhere close to danger. But, I look at it from the perspective of, is our revenue versus expenditure minus CIP about equal? And I think it is. When you deficit spend, sometimes you're accomplishing one-off projects that you're never gonna have to spend that money again. And, unfortunately or fortunately, there are deferred projects that were not accomplished in the past. There are huge projects that are being accomplished with a significant amount of grant money that's coming in that we have to match a certain amount of. So it's one of those, strike while the iron is hot. And, we have a plan for the future. We're certainly not gonna go into a dangerous territory. And as you and I talked about just before this meeting, and as Ms. Hannah, I'm sure, has ready to go on her desk, we fully intend to have a minimum emergency fund and fund balance, general fund specifically. I believe the city's currently at 29%, somewhere around there.
Proposed for this year, yeah.
Okay, which is very healthy for a community this size. I would be comfortable down to about 15% for this community. So right now, we're probably double the minimum. Certainly not overflowing with cash, but you also don't want to be. When you are overflowing with cash, it means you're not accomplishing the goals that your citizens want to see accomplished.
Thank you for your response. I also would love to hear from what the other commissioners have. Also, I guess I'll start with mine, is I would like to see us spending less money and, long-term here, can we reduce taxes? Okay, I understand that's a pie in the sky kind of hope, but spending the money because the money is there is not where I come from. So just, that's my piece. But there's a lot of, that's a big vague statement, and I understand that. But are we under regular Robert's rules, Madam Mayor? Are we?
This is regular discussion. You asked a question and
Okay.
it's kind of revolving. So.
Okay, so
As long as we make
The
sure we
question
give each
is
other time
deficit
to talk.
spending and fund balance, really. I believe, this is in the other book, but like over $1 million in deficit spending this year.
Yes.
I have a question, and maybe to, Josh would know. When we go to CapCon meetings, and the first one we went to in Lansing, I believe they called it the fund balance, where you had a certain amount of money that you had to keep for emergencies. What is that name? Was that
Fund.
correct?
That's
Okay. They gave a specific percent at those meetings in Lansing. Do you recall what that was?
Off the top of my head, no.
Do you know,
So,
Mike?
yeah, we were just talking about that, 15 to 20% is what I'd be comfortable with for this community. Generally, bigger communities have smaller percentages. In my previous community, it was 20%. But I'd be comfortable with 15% in this community.
You still want the few $1 million so that you can match grants and cover emergencies and those kind of things.
Sure.
Yeah.
Commissioner Petrie?
My concern is we are an older community with, like this year, how many water mains broke in the middle of a cold winter. I am like Stefan, you don't just spend it because it's there. I'm concerned about infrastructure things that could be an emergency and that we have cash on hand for that kind of thing. So I'm the deficit spending, have we ever spent, has it ever been that before in the past?
So for what it's worth, it is significantly cheaper to fix something before it breaks versus fixing it during an emergency.
Right.
So, you know, I don't see the problem with deficit spending. I understand we want to be fiscal conservatives, and I'm a fiscal conservative, and Ms. Hannah is a fiscal conservative. But if we're spending the money up front to fix pipe that's 50, 70, 80, 100 years old, which we anticipate will break, or where we've had multiple breaks in the past, I think in the long term, you're actually saving savings from not having to do it while it's 30 degrees below zero out there.
Agreed. Right. Do we have a plan for that?
Also, as you went through these CIPs and the budget, I saw a lot of times where equipment is needed because they've been fixing, and we, as a city, did not take a look at kind of like a program of how long we're gonna keep this. So now, here we are with all these expenses that we need to fix, and I'm very hesitant in putting it off, or a lot of things off, because of those reasons. Commissioner Brady?
Madam Mayor, I agree with you. I think being prepared to spend the money on those big infrastructure kind of things, either whether it be roads or the equipment that we need for that, is great. In 22-23, we had $5.5 million, and it was 51%. I don't know what page this is
$5.5
on.
million deficit spending?
No, we had $5.5 million fund balance.
You're in the budget?
Yeah, Mike, I don't know if, I mean, I really, before I look at all of these different specialists, or I'm sorry, the CIP items, I don't know if we're all hunky-dory that we can spend whatever we want to spend, then just buy everything. But if we're trying to get closer to zero, or if I don't know what the desire of the commission is. I only know what my thoughts are. For instance, I might look at some of these projects and say, we don't need to do that right now. To get closer to more of a zero spend year. Instead of deficit spending, or getting closer to zero. But I don't get to make that decision. So I'm not saying that we all have to make that decision. I just want to know where, before we go through all of these projects, what are we trying to do with it?
Well, first off, we don't make the decision tonight, but I think we should give them an opportunity to go through this, explain them to us, and then kind of go, geez, I got a lot of tabs, but.
Yes, I don't need any
And then kind of go
explanation.
through
I mean,
them.
I have questions.
So that we know, so that we have that opportunity and that we have a little bit of order to get things done maybe too. I don't know, that's just how we've always done it for years. Doesn't mean that we can't talk when we need to, like you're doing now, but I think we want to accomplish hearing what's going on and why our department heads and Kelly and Mr. Moat, think we need this.
So you're saying, can we, while we're going through this, say, I don't know if we need that?
Yeah, with each item.
Before we even,
Well, not each item.
yeah.
I'm prepared,
Make your comments.
yeah, I have thoughts about whether items could wait or whether we want to do them now. How aggressive would you like me to be, is my question.
Well, I mean, that's what I think that they
If
were going
everybody
to
up-
do.
Yeah, if everybody up here is saying, we're fine, spend the money, I can tolerate that, knowing that there's 5 votes on this commission, and we're gonna spend the money. But if everybody else is thinking a little bit more like myself, thinking I'd like to be closer to 0,
I would like to be closer to 0, if we could. If there's things we can eliminate and wait on, I would definitely like to be closer to 0. My opinion.
Commissioner Glissner. Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I went through everything, there appeared to be a need from all the people, all the directors. But in my estimation, the ones that really worried me the most were the ones were the wastewater treatment. That really worries me that that's going to be a problem down the road, because that's basic to what we should provide for the city and the water. So it's a matter of prioritizing certain things. I am concerned about a lot how old the infrastructure of the city is. That is bothering me. So that would be a higher priority to me than maybe some of the other things. Although, all the directors, what they ask for, they feel is important, and I don't want to diminish that at all. But I do have a concern about the infrastructure.
So to be clear, I sat down with all the department heads and the director of finance over a multi-month period, and we put together a list of what we thought we needed. This is not us just with our hands out saying, hey, we just want more expensive stuff because it's fun. We're looking out for what we think are the best long-term needs of the community. Now, I understand that you guys are uncomfortable with deficit spending. And as I told you, I'm a fiscal conservative, and so is Ms. Hannah. We will feel comfortable with this deficit spending. And I'll give you just a brief example. So I just bought a new car, as I indicated before. But I saved up for months and months and months and months and months before I bought that new car. And, then I made a big purchase. And that was a bad month for me because I spent X number of dollars buying this new car. Well, now I'm gonna save for years until I have to buy that new car again, right? So that means for years and years and years, you saw money go up, and then you deficit spend it to buy the car. Then save, deficit spend to buy the new car. That's what we're doing here, but we're talking about dozens of items. So we shouldn't be afraid of spending money because we need things for this community. Now, certainly it's within the purview and the policy of the commission to not do that. But then, and I can't guarantee things one way or the other. We don't buy a new vac truck and the vac truck breaks, we're gonna have 10 to 12 months of emergency having to borrow it from somewhere else before we can take care of ourselves. In the same way that, for instance, we could buy no ballistic vests for our police officers, and then there's a shooting, and now we might have a killed or injured police officer, right? We're not just willy-nilly buying things.
Madam Mayor.
Commissioner Brady.
I agree with you, Mr. Womack. I also see, there's resistance to, we're not gonna be able to do as many roads if we don't have the special assessments, and we're talking about $350,000 there. And I can find $350,000 in projects that I don't think need to happen this year. But even if I were to do that, we would still be quite a bit, so it's a bigger question of deficit spending overall, but also I get push on one side of, boy, we've gotta get this, we're gonna run out of money spending on roads. Okay, but police chief, I love you, you don't need a new sign. You want a new sign, you don't need a new sign. Right? That's a negotiable item. Now the bulletproof vests, yeah, we're getting the bulletproof vests, but the sign? I understand TIF is paying for some of these things, and I'm prepared to talk about all of them. I only get so many opportunities to direct my department heads that, in the way that I would like them to run their department. understanding the relationship that we have going through you, you know, there's elected officials and we have a job. We are the ones that get to vote on this budget. And I really want a nice, good budget. I really want a nice one. That's what I signed up for here, was to do this really annoying job of poking the budget as we go. So I'm gonna let you, I guess I'm gonna let you know, I'm trying to get the number closer to a zero spend. I don't need to be at zero deficit, but I'm trying to get closer. And I won't say that again.
Okay. Are you ready to move along with the projects, to take a look at them?
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll go fund by fund here, but I guess my question for Mr. Brady is, do you mean that for all funds or just some funds?
There are some very safe funds here that, you know, are, I was reviewing the wastewater treatment plant. I echo your statement about the wastewater treatment plant. I think that we want the toilets to flush and do a good job flushing. Parks fund, I love the parks. That's where a lot of stuff is. In fact, you said in your comment to us that there are two funds that you think need to really focus. The city staff are cognizant of the money being proposed to be spent in this budget and are planning to level out the expenditures over the next several budget cycles. Oops, I skipped a page. Somewhere in there, you specifically mentioned the police fund and the parks department. And, you know, I love our police department. I love our parks. It just, I wasn't the one to identify that those two departments spend a lot of money. So if you're wondering which funds, those are the funds that I'm going to look at trimming fat, I guess you could say.
Commissioner Petrie?
Can I just ask Ms. Hannah, what's this deficit spending, how is this in our normal, like what has been our largest deficit spending since you've been here? And then is this in that range, or, because he said you feel comfortable with this?
So are we talking about the general fund right now, or are we talking about the total city budget? Because those are two different things. So that's important in my mind, that we need to separate if we're talking about the grand total picture or if we're talking about just the general fund. So if you could narrow that for me, I can give you a better answer.
So do you feel comfortable with a 15% deficit, or general fund, or fund balance? Do you feel comfortable with that, or do you feel higher for, just because you've been here longer and been doing it and we haven't?
I am very comfortable with the budget that is proposed as is. The city budget, when I first came on board back in 2020, just to put this into perspective, the beginning fund balance, July 1st of 2020, was $3.6 million. Okay. Since I've been here, there have been numerous budgets. Almost every single budget has been a deficit spending for the general fund. Some of those budgets were deficit spending up to $1.4 million, okay? I know that every year, at the end of the year, we have come in significantly under budget. There are several years that we added $1 million of fund balance, where that fund balance rose to over $5 million. So now, with this proposed budget, we're projecting an ending fund balance of almost $3.7 million, which is nearly where we started back in 2020. I'm confident of every single department director sitting in this room that they do a great job of spending within their means. They don't ever spend more than they're given. And that's why, year after year, we come in under budget. I think it's a conservative budget. Absolutely, I'm very comfortable with it. It's, the projected fund balance is dropping, in the 20% range, right, between 20-30%. The fund balance policy that I've already given Mr. Womack to review. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends anywhere from 2 months to 3 months of reserve. 2 months is 16%. The city has more than that. The city has enough that if we had no money coming in, we would be able to operate for 3 months. So that's really, when we talk about reserves for the general fund, that's how I like to put it into perspective. So to say that we're dropping down, I'm very comfortable.
And would you say that's separate from some of these departments that pay for themselves, water and sewer, which we have that much larger income and expenditure?
So when we talk about the water and sewer funds, okay, and you'll see that those are different, that I call out, that is working capital, okay, for those funds. So I'm looking at what is the cash in the bank. The water fund dropped down very low. That reserve is now being built up. The wastewater sewer fund, that has been building up over the last several years. There was the PFAS lawsuit where the city had to expend a significant amount of money for that, and we've recouped quite a bit of that. So those funds are similar in that you want to know how many days do you have in the bank to operate in the event that there's no money coming in. And it is very similar. It's usually around a 90-day for water and sewer that you look to have in reserves. Now, to take that a step further, just to point this out, you know, you talk about your street funds and your park fund, your capital improvement fund. Those, the park fund is an operating fund, so I will pick on Rodney a little bit on that. But these other funds, the purpose is you don't need to have 90 days in reserves for your major and local roads. The money that comes into those funds are meant to be spent on roads. You know, sure, you should have some money in the bank, but you don't need 90 days in the bank. And if you look over the last several years, you'll see that those two funds, they have been accumulating some money over the last several years. So I'm not concerned deficit spending for those.
Yeah, generally, communities don't have a minimum fund balance for anything except for their general fund. With that all being said, could I continue? Okay. So, I'll start again. Public safety, fire hoses and nozzles, 11,000. Signage, which we want to bring them up to the current standard, which most of the other buildings have. 25,000, and then the ballistic body armor, which I believe has to be replaced every 5 years, Chief?
Correct.
28,900. Police badges, 9,500. Current badges are akin to security badges, not police badges, so we'd like to see them have some professional badges on their chests. And then the flock camera system, which you guys saw on Monday last, anticipating 25,500 for first year startup costs. Kind of going anti-clockwise. City Hall ADA entrance. So I think what we're going to do there is we're going to turn the back door into a fully ADA compliant door. And then we're also, as part of that, we're going to replace the front steps, correct? Correct. Okay, so the original plan was to put the ADA compliance in the front. That was going to be almost triple the cost. So we're going to do the cheaper option there, or propose to do the cheaper option there, I guess, at this point. Cemetery tree trimming, 9,400. I believe that's a yearly cost that we put in there. First reconstruction, second reconstruction, you know, you're looking at a huge amount of money. There's $1.6 million approximately. You know, that was kind of an added project because we didn't anticipate being prepared to do Pine Park and parking lot number 9. We certainly could decide not to do that project, but we do get a lot of complaints out of First Street, and Second Street is value added. Wastewater treatment plant. I told Mr. Hall today that you know, he may need to explain these because I don't understand what they all do, but I do trust those guys that those are very important things. And I believe that the you know, it's huge costs out there because what they do is obviously very important. So if you guys need any additional comments, I can tag somebody in on any of those. Great.
Are the boilers for providing heat to the buildings themselves?
Yes,
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, is that the one that we just had a fire on?
yes. We had two boilers circa 1980. One of them back in February had an incident, caught fire, triggered the sprinkler system, doused the control board on the secondary boiler. So we were a few weeks without any heat at all. We were on space heaters with no electrical cords or anything hooked to them. So yeah, boiler had an issue. I think the insurance company ended up cutting us a $14,000 check because it was so old and past its date of service. And so we're down to one boiler right now.
Follow-up question, Mr. Womack? Do we, the maintenance program is included still, correct? There was just like a subscription, well,
Yeah.
not subscription, but
So-
yearly, $3,000 yearly cost.
That's right, and you get 3 licenses with that. They
So
currently,
3 users?
3 users.
Okay.
They currently don't have a maintenance program of any kind.
I know we had a great guy who had been there forever, and
Yeah.
he just knew everything.
It was it's still a lot of legacy knowledge, but,
Yeah.
in part of the asset management is you are able to trend what you're doing to the equipment, what's costing you money, any kind of new equipment that we get, we're able to data log that. Just when you're talking about, tracking the trend and what you're actually spending on an asset, this enables us to do that.
And is this a program that you've used before?
It is.
Great.
I used it for the last 3 years with my former company.
Great.
So, going down from there, 18 East Nipissing Street, everybody's favorite project. I know it's a huge expense. Ms. Ledensky and I have met, a couple dozen times over the last couple of weeks on this project. The city currently has, I believe, $25,000 in our current year budget for engineering and all sorts of planning related to the eventual demolition of that property. And what was the current proposal we talked about 23, 21?
It is 21,208 to
Okay.
be exact.
And that was down from what, 28, 29 that we originally started?
Yeah, the original was 29.
For demo cost? Or engineering for demo?
If I may,
Please.
the 5,300 of that is for that due care plan, that's like the environmental plan, and I think is important for us to have because of safety of everybody involved. The next step would be demolition cost estimate, which is $12,778. That I feel is important because if we have no idea what the demolition could cost, we might as well get that, and I would need that to go looking for grant funding. Some sort of, what is this gonna cost? The last thing that they pared down on this was a conceptual rendering. They wanted to give us 3 or 4 different options, and I just said, look, right now, we just are looking to try to get grant funding. Give us one picture of what you're, conceptually what this could be, and let us go forward and see if we can even come up with some grant funding. I don't think it's our intention, if I'm speaking for you, to go spend $200,000. We would like to spend nothing out of the city's pocket to get this demolished. But I've already contacted the state land bank. They're the ones who suggested we get this demolition cost estimate so that we can possibly move forward with them. Because this was a land bank project, I'm thinking maybe we have a good shot at getting some funds there. We would probably have to match though, 50-50 match on the overall demolition.
Sorry, if I could just bookend on before we get to Mr. Brady. So, yeah, very, very similar to what I was gonna say is, we see $200,000 here, and I know you guys are seeing $200,000, but what I'm seeing is a placeholder, because Ms. Ledensky and I are working furiously to come up with grant money. And this kind of goes back to the ongoing discussion we've had about purchasing policy. I don't personally believe that when you guys authorize money, that it's mine to spend. I see that as you authorizing us to go out and do the work in anticipation of being able to come up with an appropriate cost at a later date that you guys could then approve of. So, if we're gonna go through the process and we come up with $200,000 for the grant money, that's no brainer at that point, right? But we can only come up with 20,000 of a $200,000 project, we might not bring it to you because we acknowledge 180,000 is a lot for a project like this. Now, you know, I'm firmly of the belief that you gotta take care of the stuff you already got, and this is one of those things that's been, the can's been kicked down the road for how long? People on this board have been here for a while. It's been here for a long time,
Long
right?
time.
And it's not being taken care of. That's because each year, year after year, it's gonna cost $200,000, nobody wants to do it. But from the perspective of the work that Ms. Lodensky's putting in, I'd like to keep this at least for a placeholder, so that later on we can come back and say, here are some grant options that are available to us, and then let you guys make a decision at a later date.
Commissioner Brady had his hand up first.
So you're saying in my head, I can subtract $200,000?
In your head, you can do anything you want.
100,000, then that way you won't be so disappointed if you
So-
can't get.
I mean, I understand in a budget, you budget high,
Yeah.
maximum cost, and then a lot of times we're kind of come in under, and like the truck we just approved, that's a $300,000 spend, not a $600,000 spend, but,
So what?
still needs to make sense.
While you're managing your thoughts, Ms. Lodensky actually asked, was it 125 you asked about leaving in the budget for?
Yeah, I can see that this could be pared down. I mean, we've already had a contractor go in, a demolition contractor, and kind of give us you're looking at 200, 250. So I think if we left 125, that would even be shooting high to, if we were to get a match, you know, a grant that we could match. So I fully understand your hesitance to.
I would do it for $200,000, I'd tear that building down for you.
I would do it for 50 grand. No, I'm kidding.
For 25.
But part of the larger discussion, as we were discussing a few minutes ago, I mean, first of all, you know, sometimes you overestimate because you don't want to be caught short. Generally, there's 3 to 4% of your spend that you just don't spend each year. And occasionally, you've got big projects that just don't go, like this. So we put 125 in the budget, 200 in the budget, and we get to the end of the budget, that 1.0 million overspend deficit is now actually only $800,000 overspend. So if you look historically, you'll see, as Ms. Hannah was indicating, $1 million deficit, $1.5 million deficit, and yet we still have fund balance, right? So this isn't, you know, an abnormal thing, it's just kind of how the process works. Ms. Peter, I'm sorry, you said.
I just was, Denise answered the question, saying that we could be much less, depending on grants or it could be a worst case scenario, and if it was, we would say we're not gonna do it right now, so.
Yeah, so this goes back to my conservative philosophy about spending on the purchase policy. You know, the purchase policy theoretically says that the city manager, once it's budgeted, can spend the money. I don't believe that. My department heads know that my philosophy, if it's gonna be over $20,000, and it's not an emergency, we should be taking it to the board for final approval. If for no other reason, then, you know, you've got, let's say, 2 or 3 bids, and the 2 or 3 bids are, you know, Mike Womack's brother, Mike Womack's sister, and some independent third party, right? There's that safety precaution along with it. So that's why we do that. So, I don't know if you guys want to talk about that more, but we'll get into it a little more in-depth as we get through this.
Whoa.
I just have one
Elizabeth
more
has a
question.
question.
When I looked at that 200,000, my mind was saying, we're going to get rid of it and put in something else for the 200,000, but this is just budgeted to wipe it out.
There's another
And if I may, this would be strictly the step of demolition.
Okay.
There is more to this bid from the engineering firm for $14,110, which is a demolition scope of work. So if we get to the point where we get grant funding, this company can also write the package for the whoever, you know, and then we get 3 bids, see what the demolition really is gonna cost from that point, and either go forward or not. And Mr. Womack and I have talked, you know, we could do an elaborate deck scenario, or there's companies out here, I mean, we could go to Builders First Source and a couple of lumber companies and really probably get a decent deck layout or something that's not gonna be a whole elaborate park, you know, I mean, it can be as much as we want it to be, or we can par back and make sure that we're not just, to the hill with that.
I just had one more question. Do you have any companies that would do, that would work both? Do the demolition and say, and then here's the great deal that we'd like to do to rebuild. Do you have companies that would do both?
We don't at this point, just maybe a little premature, but we've thought about that. Once you mobilize equipment, it might be worth it just to do the whole thing. Once again, maybe that could come with further grant funding, because once they demo, they're gonna have to at least
Take
make
it
it
away.
safe. This, that area. So, I think we'll learn a lot more when we get into it. I mean, I realize the money, we gotta be conservative, but that's something that possibly could be done too, in the long run, save.
And keep in mind that this project's been talked about at length, especially through the BDA, that part of town just doesn't have a lot of foot traffic, and they think it would be transformative to the downtown to get this project done, but with a lot of moving pieces, and we fully acknowledge it's a tough sell. We know that. So, downtown sidewalk improvements. So this was kind of a transition between the former DPW director and the new DPW director. Mr. Slusher, do you have an updated price on that? I know we were talking as low as possibly 90.
Yeah, I don't have an updated price of it. We are talking to different contractors at this time, so I believe it's gonna be right around that.
So I think I left down in the building department this morning, some color options that were presented to me by Mr. Calvert. So currently we have brick throughout the downtown, up and down Nipissing Street, and it's kind of sunken over the years. Not only do you have dirt kind of washing into the curb line where mold, mildew, grass even grows out of it, but it also presents a tripping hazard. So I think along with the parking lot number 9 project, that this could have a huge transformative change to the downtown, especially from an aesthetics point of view, but also, one tripping lawsuit, and there goes all this money, right? The question for the board's gonna be, do we wanna try to use brick again, which would then probably have the same problem in 10 or 20 years? Or do we wanna move to something that's more like a stamped concrete, which can be colored and marked as kind of brick, but it's treated more like concrete? So that's what I was dropped off this morning for me, is all the different colors, the price options, which I'm sure eventually will come to this board. Center for the Arts, building improvements, that's put in there every year, $10,000 for the various issues that that building has. Genesee Street Bridge replacement, $4.3 million, that's a huge grant attached to that, 3 point something.
Mm-hmm.
So was that 95-5 split?
I believe so.
Okay,
It's
so.
a large portion.
So I think the city's only responsible for about 5% of that. Genesee Street reconstruction, engineering, $200,000. I think we're still hope upon hope that we can maybe do those in the same year, otherwise we might have Genesee Street closed for 2 consecutive years, which is not fun. But this bridge replacement at least is gonna have that shut down for, what do we anticipate, 6 months? DPW lean-to, fire suppression, $35,000. That's in addition to the money from previous years. Okay. And then community center pavilion, so was it the old volleyball courts, we want to replace one of those with a covered pavilion. And that's in support of not only pickleballers, but also the summer program that you do out there, right? Expansion, city hall study, so I know this is something the board's gonna wanna talk about. At this point, we're just asking for a study on the future needs of both city hall and I guess city buildings in general. I believe that the city purchased the land on the other side of the parking lot with the intention that a city building go there at some point in the future. The actual costs of that, we don't know at this point. We also don't know what the needs are of the community. Ms. Petrie, I know you were talking the other day about the traffic that's over on that street, so maybe that's not an ideal location. But I think part of the study would be both locations and needs and costs. So at this point, we're asking for 30. I think we could do it for less than that. But we're asking for 30 with the anticipation that the actual build-out would be in the future. The only change so the planning commission approved of the CIP, by the way. The only change that they made was they moved the actual build-out to 30-31. So that's the only change that's made to the CIP. Water slide and staircase, 51,000. Rodney, talk to me about the money on that, because that's a $200,000 project.
Yeah, it's a little over 200,000, so we're currently working on that. We paid about 100,000, maybe a little more. But it's kind of split over 2 years, you know, building it right now, you know, at the manufacturer site, and then it's not gonna get built at the rec center until this, you know, late August, early September. So that's where you see the 51,000, that's like the balance of what we owe for that project. The main chunk of it will be in the current budget, that's what we're working on now, so. And that fully funded through a donation that we received.
It was, you said fully funded.
Fully funded through that, yeah.
And they're also helping pay for pickleball courts in Crampton, right?
Yeah, which we're working on right now to get a final price on, but the remainder of that donation hopefully will be covering the Crampton Park tennis courts transferred into pickleball. So,
Not all of them, though. We're saving one as tennis, right?
correct, that's it.
And I believe we got yelled at on both sides for that one?
Yes.
Like, some people want to be turned into pickleball, and some people want more tennis courts.
Correct.
Just can't win sometimes. And then boilers, 400,000. Are you gonna have to knock the roof off to do that, or?
Yeah, well, nowadays, the boilers that we have are literally probably like 12 by 12 by 12. They're massive, and nowadays the boilers are much smaller. We think that they could be able to crane them on our roof and get them through our doorway, the new ones. Now, getting the old ones out, that's something that our engineers that are working on are gonna have to figure out how we're gonna get the old ones out. We went through this process with our domestic heat boilers for like the showers and faucets, just previous budget. They were able, those were also big, not as big. They were able to cut them down on site and literally carry them up and down the stairs. So we're hopeful that can happen again. They might be able to cut them in much larger chunks and then crane them off the roof. Hopefully we don't have to tear out a wall to do it like we had to for our air handlers that we replaced about 10 years ago. Yes.
Are the boilers being funded by TIFA 1?
Well, hopefully, Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the 400,000, I don't know if they have that full amount for this next budget year. If not, pretty close, but we are proposing it to be paid for out of TIFA 1, yes.
So there are contributions from, I believe, TIFA 1, 2, and 3 for the Parks and Rec Department, and I believe that's being covered as part of the TIFA. Specifically for TIFA 1, so.
TIFA 1 did approve that purchase. They have approved their budget. And I believe that all of you would have received their packet when I gave the book. Thank you. Yeah. So TIFA did approve the book.
And so we're just including that in our CIP to approve that project.
So the city, because this is a city building, the city would pay for the expense, the commission approves that expense. TIFA is providing the Parks Fund a donation. So any TIFA 1, 2, and 3, all of their contributions are really just contribution to the Park Fund. Yes, we have communicated to them, our request to them for their contribution is to cover these specific items, but they're not buying the boilers, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, and just two more here on the actual map itself. Well pump at well number 247, is that a reconditioning of the well pump? Yes. And then the M24 pedestrian connection, also known as tunnel to somewhere. So 882, a huge portion of that's been covered by grant dollars, but I don't remember the
Find it,
exact
I
number.
think it's some 700,000. That's about $600,000 grant, and then balance for the construction and the engineering would be paid for through TIFA 2 and 3.
And hopefully that project will be done at some point.
Yeah, hopefully by September it'll be completed.
Okay. After how many years?
Well, I think that tunnel was put in 2012, when they did 24. And then some of the paperwork I've seen dated back to 2015.
So And this is a one-off project, you're not
10.
planning on doing another one of those anytime soon?
Hopefully, in
It's close to 10.
the future.
Sorry.
Is it here?
All right, so now switching into the little boxes on the left-hand side, vehicles and equipment. Plow assemblies, 10,300, that's obviously for the pickup trucks and pushing snow around. Police vehicle replacement, another thing that's provided to us by the mechanics based on the number of hours of use. Bucket truck 240, I believe we pushed that off from last year, because last year's budget was overdrawn. So 240,000 bucks for that. And they use that for all sorts of things. Gator utility vehicle, 25,000. We did talk about potentially buying a used one for reduced cost, and our mechanics indicated they thought that would be higher than usual maintenance on that, so they proposed a new one. Computer workstations, 25,000 bucks. There's not a whole lot to do about that. That's all we do all day is use computers. Toolboxes, again, for the mechanics. Apparently those are getting worn out. Back truck, which you guys have already authorized. Half-ton pickup truck, 48,000. Is that for Parks Department? Because that's not pushing snow. Wastewater treatment. No. Sewer camera, 110,000 bucks, and we talked about trying to get that price down too, right, Ross? Did you come up with anything?
We've looked at a few options, and I think we can get that considerably lower.
So I'm not sure if the commission wants to wait until he has another price option, possibly reduce that, or if you want to leave it at 110, just know that we'll come in underestimate on that. And then election equipment, 20,000. I believe that clerk's office usually gets grant money for that.
That's what I was gonna ask, Ramona, does the state reimburse you anything on that at all? If it's required by them, do they reimburse you, or it's just up to us?
So what they're saying right now is that they're projecting to go out to bid in 26 for the 28 cycle. It depends on which side of the coin you listen to. If they're gonna require us to have it, then the state has to pay for it, otherwise we can use the same equipment. The other people are saying, no, you need to budget for it, so. They've always paid for it in the past.
Okay.
The state's really good about giving us guidance on elections. Sidewalk repair and maintenance, so this is in addition to the downtown sidewalk project that we're planning. I believe 50,000 is in the budget every year for sidewalks. This is both replacing the sidewalk and also the shaving that you see done occasionally. And then just for point of reference, the sidewalk that was done just recently in front of the dog park cost $45,000. So considering how many old beat up sidewalks we have in the community, that's about what you get for $50,000. Manhole coring, this is part of our new engineering standards where I think we're trying to put concrete around all of our manholes so they don't have that dip that occurs over time. And then you see scrub seal, micro seal for both major and local streets. Any thoughts, questions, concerns about that so far? Okay, well, I'm gonna skip the intervening pages. I'm gonna go to page 23. So all sorts of great information there if you guys wanna go over it at your own time, but I think probably just for ease of discussion, we don't wanna go category by category here. So this is buildings and land total. You can see, you know, if you're familiar with reading the CIPs, 25, 26, which would be our current proposal, and then it goes off into the distant future. Center for the Arts, lean-to structure 18, Nipissing, parking lot number 9. Oh, I'm sorry, I guess that's next year. And then City Hall 88 entrance this year budget. Into the future, I believe the 200,000 for 18 Nipissing was the anticipated deck that we thought might be built there. And then the 880 for the parking lot number 9. So I don't know if you guys want me to go through every single line item for the future, but I'll try to call out anything that has changed.
Commissioner Brady?
I'm not happy about this lean-to structure, that it wasn't included in the original purchase and construction.
Yeah, you're not the only one. I was a little disappointed that that wasn't a known factor when it was originally proposed. But, you know, according to the fire code, if we're going to.
Yeah,
do
well,
it.
let's make it right. So this is, TIFA 2 is giving money to us, to our general fund, and we're choosing to spend it on this project, if my understanding of TIFA.
We specifically asked them for funding to cover this project. They've already agreed to pay for the structure.
Mhm.
And so we went back to them and asked for the additional funding for the fire suppression, and they have approved that.
Thank you.
I'll tell you what, we've got great staff, but occasionally we do make mistakes and we try to do right. when we
Stop
make
it.
mistakes.
Stop doing that. Just
Sorry.
kidding. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you. Sometimes I'm sarcastic, and I don't mean to be as sarcastic as I come off.
You're not allowed to be sarcastic.
Okay.
There's no sarcasm in this room.
So is the 35 just the fire suppression for the lean-to that we did
Correct.
last year?
Okay.
Commissioner Brady?
I was gonna say, make sure you address the chair, just,
I thought we were in open discussion.
well,
Well, everybody's raising their hand, so we should have a little.
I
just
tried
for,
to follow
just for
rules.
direction.
I try to follow rules all the time. Thank you. So, City Hall ADA, so there, push-button door
Correct.
downstairs at the back.
Correct.
We still don't know about, I mean, we got like 6 parking spots back there.
I think we got 3 and 8 handicapped.
A single handicap parking?
Correct. And obviously, getting through that narrow alleyway is not ideal for anybody.
Yeah, like to take your vehicle through there, right?
Right.
But that's, you're still thinking about that and how you can address that as a separate issue, right?
Well, I mean, I'd love to enter into some kind of parking agreement with the people next door. But from what I understand, they, on the days that they need it, they need all their parking spaces. This is one of the impetuses for potentially looking at a new city hall is, we have a car culture in this country.
Mhm.
And people want the ability to be able to park within 2 feet of the place that they want to go. Heck, I think if people could get a drive-through on a city hall, they'd go for it. Matter of fact, I think I'm open to that as a possibility.
Just try to get that Rite Aid over there. I know
Uh,
it's, sorry. So I guess my question is, since you mentioned the new city hall, like, are we, and that project got, not
Pushed
earmarked or,
very
put,
well.
pushed a little, so, I hear the complaint about this building not being handicap accessible. I'm not myself handicapped, I'm not sure even what I'm looking at. Are our bathrooms up to the standards that they need to be? Like, is this, let's just pretend we're gonna be here for the next 5 years, and you'd like to spend some money doing this. Is there anything else that we would need?
So, in my previous
Carpet.
community, we brought in actually an ADA consultant who gave us a whole long list of all the things that we could do to be gold star, platinum level certified ADA. It could be extremely expensive to do that. I don't think we're obligated to do all those things, but obviously, just from the perspective of we want to do those things, I think incremental improvements as the dollars are available is the appropriate way to go. As I indicated previously, we talked originally about making the front of City Hall the ADA compliant side, but it was at double the cost.
Mhm.
And obviously, because we're fiscal conservatives, we chose not to do that. We're talking about a small minority of the people, and we want to be, available and accessible to them. And obviously, my staff is great. If they saw somebody who was struggling to be able to get inside the building, I'd probably have 5 people running outside to help. But from the perspective of, we can't spend all the money all the time for all the improvements, we thought this was the best course of action based on the ability to spend the money.
Madam Mayor?
Commissioner Brady?
So the back door has a handicap accessible spot, will then be much more accessible if this project goes through. It's then a 0 entry to pay your water bill at the front or to do business at the buildings department. Anything on that level is 0 entry, correct?
Correct.
And then we have the elevator, they can come upstairs, and then it's pretty seamlessly,
Apart from the carpet, yes.
apart from the carpet. Okay. Do we have signage that lets people know that there is a handicap accessible rear access?
We could probably do better with signage.
Because I'm not aware if there's a handicap spot up front or not.
I don't know if there is.
It might be nice to have a sign
There's not.
that directs people that if you need that service, you
Every
can
single one.
get it to the back.
I'm sure that my DPW is taking notes. Okay, nothing else, I'll move on to cemetery.
Well, I'm sorry. Are you confident that we can accommodate that signage within this $20,000 of this project, or does that need to go?
Yeah, if not, I mean, we have just general city hall maintenance budget.
Okay.
You know, we can find money for stuff like that. That's not a significant cost.
Madam Mayor, you have kids.
Yes.
I just am wondering, the carpet's been mentioned, and I wonder if that's gonna be a deterrent to handicapped person. Are they going to trip on that, or
No.
should we be taking care
So
of
that was a
that?
half joke and a half not joke.
It's because it's been put off year after year after year because of the fact that it's not a priority. But it could be a
I mean, should
hazard
we-
for people. It could be for our staff.
Right, should we?
And then they could break their leg, foot, whatever.
So we did have, I think, 15,000 in the budget this past year for replacing the carpeting. And then we had, I believe it was a sewer issue, and we ended up spending over 15,000 bucks on fixing the sewer issue. You know, this carpet is well worn, and it does rip on occasion and comes up, and it does present a tripping hazard. Now, thankfully, our DPW guys are great, we're able to glue it in place, and we've been doing that for a long time. But, yeah, it's not ideal.
Commissioner Brady.
This is where 18 East Nipissing is in our paper, so I just, I guess-
You think you have nothing further to say?
I've got a lot to say. So let me recap my understanding. My understanding is that we need about 25,000 in order to proceed with the cost estimate for demolition, with like a single proposal and the care plan. And is that included in this $200,000?
No, so that's in current year budget from last year.
Oh, it's already,
Correct.
okay. So this is just a placeholder, so that we show our intention of doing this project.
Yes and no. I
Okay.
mean,
Or-
it is a placeholder insofar as I'm still obligated to bring it back to you guys and show, here's the great deal we put together, do you want to proceed at that
Mhm.
point? But it is showing that it's a project you want to proceed.
Mhm.
If you don't want to proceed on this, let's just get rid of it. But we've already put a ton of time and effort in trying to put this together. And Ms. Soldensky is amazing at getting grant dollars, so I'm firmly confident that she can come up with something. The question then becomes, is it worth it to you guys from a policy perspective to then spend whatever the dollar amount is? But just like so many other projects, if we don't have a plan on the shelf, there's no way to get grant money.
Mhm. That's what I was thinking of, is the get a plan on the shelf, and that's what this is indicating.
Yep.
Okay.
But we're hoping the plan's way cheaper.
Oh, yes, we always.
Commissioner
hope that.
Glissman has her hands up.
Madam Mayor, thank you. This is just a curiosity question. We mentioned getting handicap signs. Obviously, we have street signs. Where do we get our signs?
Is there a specific, is it Dornbos?
No, it's, normally we get our signs up from Action Municipal, it's out of, Otisville.
Okay. And the reason I bring this up, I know we can't do this, but I've been on tours in Rochester Hills, and they make all their own signs, and they have all the equipment, and it's just fascinating to watch it. But I didn't know where we got our signs, and I'm going to assume that the costs are reasonable.
Yeah, and just for what it's worth, DDA got grant money to put in directional signage in the downtown. I know that they're gonna be working with the DPW to get those installed, but another thing that I'm planning on doing, both, I think, with Parks and the county administrator, is walk through our parking lots to identify all the signage, how do you put it? It kind of blends into the background. You see it, but you don't see it. Because I'm opposed to signage for signage sake. I want to have signage that if you see the signage, you know it's our signage, which is why the directional signage is going to be a Lapeer blue color. But I also just don't think we need to have signage everywhere that's not being used. For a good example, we have a new chiropractor that's going in on the south side of Nipissing. And he's indicated that during some of the festivals, during some of the busier nights, his customers can't get to his shop. And of course, they're already in poor condition because of the chiropractor, right? So we've talked about installing maybe 30-minute or 60-minute only signage. And this is just an example of, I want to make the city downtown be a little bit more friendly from a signage perspective. And so examples like this of, well, Mike, if you're a handy-capable person, you don't know where the ADA entrance is, right? It's that type of like walking around your community and seeing what needs to be improved that I love. So, yeah, we'll find signs for it, but I don't think we have the capabilities of making our own signs. All right.
Mr. Brady.
Cemetery, Mr. Brady?
this is a, before you switch gears, how often do all these folks get to sit together in a meeting? Do you-
Every 2 weeks at minimum,
Okay, and you have your full department head staff?
unless they're busy that day, yes.
Okay.
And then they
Just-
see me on a weekly basis, usually at their office. And-
Yeah, I just really like the holistic view that everybody kind of knows where things are coming, how things tie together. And so I just wanted to, I knew that you met with them regularly, just wanted to get the detail of it. Thank you.
I'd like to think that they're comfortable going to each other too without me.
Yeah, you just don't always, like, some of your departments overlap majorly, and that's great. More of that, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I only see these folks on our schedule every 2 weeks, and it's a business meeting, so it's not.
You guys want to meet more?
We'll talk about that after the meeting.
We love their
It's thanks to Roger.
I'm getting $50 for being
Oh.
here.
I don't know where we got.
Sorry, Mr. Hall, this is Jason Hall, he's our new wastewater treatment plant superintendent. Currently,
Jason
I haven't
Hall.
introduced him in the past.
I haven't seen him at a meeting,
So.
Nice
We
to
met him
Nice to
during the
meet you.
runoff. I think we forget who was there and who wasn't.
so, yeah.
Yeah, so for what it's worth.
When you first started, I think on your
First
first day.
He came to this meeting at my behest because I told him I don't know all the things that the wastewater treatment plant does with CIP, and I asked him to come just in case you guys had questions. He is not technically a department head insofar as I'm not asking him to come to your bi-weekly meetings. So he's available if he's got something on the agenda that he needs to explain or something like that. But there's also been a bit of a split in the departments. Under the former DPW director, wastewater was one of his departments. Under the new setup, DPW is now road, water, sewer, and wastewater is reporting directly to me. So that's kind of why he's here. All right, can I go to cemeteries?
Please.
Thanks. All right, so tree trimming, as again, you'll see 9,400 bucks are put in there every year for the next couple of years. And then cremation niche, Mr. Church, what's that?
I believe that's for the following year, but,
Sure, but I'm just kind of giving them
Okay.
a preview for the future.
yeah, so that's something that was brought up at a park board meeting. Commissioner Blitzman was at that, she's on the cemetery board. And that's just something new that cemeteries are doing. It's a cheaper alternative to purchasing a grave space and burying cremains. It's almost like are you guys familiar with those?
Is this like a wall where you?
Yeah,
you know-
yeah, it's like a wall that has your individual spot. You would purchase the little, 4x8
Do we
rectangle.
have a spot to put the flowers?
Yeah, yeah, so I mean, it's something we gotta look further into, and we will over the next year, but, there could be a way for us to generate extra revenue, and also, gives people an opportunity to not have to actually pay for a space, instead of just, purchasing like a mini vault, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm on to, let's see, equipment. This is a huge part of the CIP. So, just for, the first year, we already talked about all these, but you can see year after year, it's pretty expensive. At the bottom, total, we received 1.2 in this year, 700, next year, 720 the year after that, 600, 652. So it's always pretty expensive. But this is one of the reasons why I think Ms. Hannah and I are comfortable, is this is kind of a one-off year because of the Vector truck purchase. And then it goes down to almost half the price in subsequent years.
Us, me, no. Commissioner Petrie.
I didn't raise my hand.
Had to make-
I mean,
That's okay.
Brady.
Eventually you'll just start throwing stuff at me, and that'll be
Yeah.
fine too. So my understanding is the vacuum truck is paid for by the sewer department as it gets used, correct?
Correct.
That's what you told. So we don't necessarily need to be setting money aside as we do for the fire trucks,
We
in your
already
opinion?
set money aside for every vehicle in this list. There are equipment rental rates that are calculated between myself and the DPW each year to determine how much money should be set aside for the replacement of every single vehicle in our fleet. And that's where in each department, you see an equipment rental charge.
Mhm.
That is money going to the motor pool fund to replace all that equipment in the future.
And it ends up being like 1.3 million or something like that, correct, per year? Or it's.
Yes, each year, yes, this year I bumped it up because
Okay.
I felt that there needed to be an additional contribution. I've been working with the DPW over the last several years to improve that equipment rental charge because I'm not sure that the city was funding it at a level they should have been in the past.
You're doing
So
such a
we're-
good job. I
we're
don't know if anybody
working-
tells you that, but you're
Thank
doing such a
you.
good job. Thank you
He
so much
never
for what you
tells me
do.
that.
I have
But
a,
we're working to improve that.
great. The police vehicles, goodness, they're expensive, chief. I know we switched over to the other, to the Tahoes, but just referring again to Mr. Womack's statement kind of in the beginning of the budget, police department is one of the very expensive ones. I know a lot of that is staffing, and we want the best. We want the best.
And that's not just the car, it's everything that's in it that costs.
Correct. They just, I'm, in my mind, there's a 2020 police cruiser that's on its way out, and I just want to get the most out of them that we can. I don't get a lot of chances to tell the chief directly, those are some expensive vehicles, but, those guys matter. I'm intrigued to continue the discussion about like the flock cameras and also, goodness, I live on West Genesee, and I can't help but see that if there was a sign that flashed that said you're going 45 miles an hour, that wouldn't help.
Madam Mayor, I think that's a fantastic idea. I did read your email. I have started looking at some of that
Mhm.
stuff, and
Just to reduce,
Yeah.
the time hours and the wear and tear hours and those kind of things, what kind of like passive
gotta make
policing?
sure the speed is capped so people don't try to break their record speed going through.
Josh is out there on his bike, trying to go 25 miles an hour.
So, for what it's worth, we had speed cameras in my previous community, and you can set it over a certain amount, it doesn't say your speed.
It'll just say warning or.
Just slow down.
Yeah, those.
Also, to be clear, I'm not advocating for speed citation
No,
cameras. I just want the
Totally
sign that
understand.
flashes, Jeff. I just want the sign that flashes that says you're going too fast.
Those are also
Some
really
new
good.
vehicles also have it
Facial
right on your
recognition.
dashboard. This road is 25, this road's 40. So you gotta look at that too. Commissioner Petrie.
Can I just ask you, the 130, how many police vehicles is that? Just
Two.
two?
Fully
That's
equipped?
fully equipped too. There's a lot of equipment that goes into these vehicles. It's really expensive. Whether it's the cage, the camera system, there's computer software that goes into them. It's costly.
And how many, like,
Commission-
operational vehicles, I'm sorry.
We'll get back to you. Commissioner Atwood had his hand up.
Somebody else has a turn.
Yes.
Do you know, like, the safety, is the Tahoe's safer than the Explorers? I know.
Well, I think generally speaking, they're
Bigger.
they're higher, they're bigger, they're wider. I would imagine just by some of those features will make it safer. I can't tell you specific crash ratings compared to, I can't tell you that off the top of my head. I can research that
Safety
for you.
first.
I agree. I think bigger is better, but
That was it for that.
Commissioner Brady.
I guess my question is how many police patrol vehicles do we have operational at a time, and how often are they replaced? Can you just give us kind of the quick view?
sure. So every 5 years they get replaced. And it's usually typically around 90,000 miles in 5 years. But the biggest issue, and I'm sure he can attest to it, it's the engine hours.
The idle
They're
time.
running a lot, there's a lot of idle. And we still kind of like what he was saying about getting the most bang for your buck on the return, that they go into these gov.deals and we try to recoup some of that money back.
But in some cases, it goes to a different department.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Commissioner Reed.
Correct. Can you just kind of help me understand the school liaison officer and how we're recouping some revenue from that? And like, are they getting
Yeah.
vehicles?
So that's all part of the fleet. When I first got here, one of the first things I did was look at the SRO contract with Lapeer Community Schools. I found out that we were only getting like $35,000 a year or something really low. So I called Mr. Wandry up, and he knew I'd be calling because I've dealt with him at the county level, and he's like, son of a gun. So we now negotiated I wrote up a contract. It's a 60-40 split. So now we take in, what, 180,000 a year on that?
It's a significant increase.
Compared to the 35 that we were getting when I first got here. On top of that, they pay for all the overtime. So if they want an SRO to come to sporting events, we send them a bill quarterly or monthly, and they pay that as well. So we take the car, the car's on us. We don't nickel and dime it, because we use it during the summer when there isn't school in session.
Yeah.
or-
Well, I saw they paid, like the uniforms was in there, so
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
didn't know like what.
Yeah, so there's little things, so they'll take care of the training, the uniforms. There's a conference that they go to, SEPLA conference, that Lapeer will pay for that too. So, it's a pretty good deal for us, for sure.
Okay, and the high school is the only school that's in the city limits, correct?
No.
No. Which other
Yeah.
schools are, sorry, Turl would be.
In Roland Warner.
Roland Warner is, okay.
So we have 2 SROs.
Where did the crossing guards come in under the budget? What's on
Part-time.
it?
It's the part-time employment.
That's the part-time,
Yeah.
okay. Just curious. Another important piece.
Oh, absolutely. And they're great people. They've been doing it for years. They're awesome.
Madam Mayor, so Zemmer is not in the city limits because it's just a little bit back
Correct.
off the road?
The sheriff's department has that
Okay.
as a contract.
So it's
with us.
Mayfield Township.
Yeah.
Wow. I never knew that.
Okay, I'm on to local streets, page 64. So, local street improvement, 60,000, I believe that's just part of the yearly budget for micro seal, crack sealing, and all the stuff that they do on a regular basis. And then you see the First Street, Second Street, that we talked about, those need to be. And, from previous CIPs, you see there's been some shuffling around. I believe First Street was originally planned for next year's budget, and Second Street was it even in the budget? Or in the CIP?
The other way
I
around.
don't think it was.
Second Street was in the budget, 5 years out.
Okay, so it was in
I
the
mean,
CIP.
it was quite a,
But, mobilization costs can be 15 to 20% of the project overall cost, so it just makes sense from the perspective of doing those both together. And then you see, obviously, the huge cost, Pine Street next year. And then moving forward, Hope Street looks like it's gonna be the next big one. So, I think we probably in this community need to do, Mr. Slusher, what's our pacer ratings ability to get that done? I mean, is that something we have to contract out?
The contract out pacer rating?
Yeah, how do we get our pacer ratings?
Yes, we need contract out.
I think we probably need to do a better 10-year projection on what streets we're gonna do, both major and locals. I think 6 years is probably just cutting it a little too close from the perspective of the community should have a better idea of what we're spending our money on or what we plan to spend our money on. So that might be a proposal for next year, is to bring in an engineering group to do that type of work for us.
I'll get Rick to you. I have one quick
You're
question.
the mayor, you get to decide if I get to go or you get to go.
How long ago was that Pacer study done? It seems like it was a long time ago.
23, it sounds like.
I think it was-
Oh, then I must be thinking about the first one. Okay. Commissioner Brady.
Just along with that, Manager Womack, I would love to see like I know we've talked about, it's row engineering would maybe be the keeper of how old are our pipes underneath of the roads, because of how closely we want to tie those two sets of problems together. So if you're looking at doing another pacer, I don't know if that's GIS. GIS spending is still.
So GIS is something I think the county's trying to take the lead on into the future. And so we kind of maintain our own system, and I'm not sure it's worth it if the county GIS system works out better.
Yeah.
But, you know, GIS and PACE are two different things.
Which one, so how are we keeping track of which roads, or I'm sorry, which pipes, besides from, you know, how often we send the backhoe out to that street?
The water and sewer pipes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that they have, you know, age of various pipes along with, they keep track of where the bursts are. You know, so you're right, sometimes we'll replace a road because the water and sewer underneath needs to be replaced, and sometimes we do work on a road just because the surface itself is in bad shape. But this is, you know, multiple variables about why we think we need to have an engineering firm come in and do that type of study for us.
Yeah, I just want to encourage and try to put those two things together as much as we can.
Thank you.
I have one more.
Good.
This is, I'm gonna try not to gripe about it, but as we think about First Street, and that is a street that obviously has had a lot of patchwork and repair because it's had the broken streets. Those folks have not, they've been paying their property taxes, they just have not been benefiting from having a great street underneath of them, like everybody else who pays their property taxes have. And the people on Second Street really don't necessarily need the new street in the way that, certainly not in the way that First and Second Street. We're saving 15%. We are. We decided to do their project, and we're saving 15%.
It's not my money, it's the public's money.
Correct.
It's also, the property taxes don't pay for roads. Act 51 dollars pays for roads. So what we're talking about is if we're gonna do Second Street 5 years down the road, we could save 15% of $1.6 million. I don't know, that makes a ton of sense to me, especially since costs now are gonna be lower than they will be 5 years from today. But I just don't wanna tie property taxes being paid to roads in front of your house, because that's not what pays for road maintenance.
The property taxes don't pay for roads?
No.
Correct.
The Act 51 dollars
Correct.
From the state.
from the state.
Yes.
So then what does the special assessment pay for?
Special assessment helps pay for a percentage of the road cost, along with Act 51 dollars. And then in this community, I think we have, what, 1 mil from our property taxes?
0.5.
0.5, 0.5 of a mil, and this is abnormal. 0.5 of a mil of the property taxes goes to local streets.
Okay, so of our dollar that we get, the 33% that we keep, and then the 33% that we give to somebody else, and our property taxes also going to the state? Or is that our income taxes that are going to the state so that we can get it back as 51?
Property taxes in the state. So Act 51 is when you register your car, you pay a license fee. Also, every time you fill up your gas tank, you're paying taxes through purchasing the gasoline.
Okay, well, the people on First Street have been paying for that too.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, thank you for the correction, that was informative.
Well, I mean, again, this is one of those things where you guys could pick what roads you want to see us fix. You can do that, that's within your purview. But I'm hoping it would be based upon some kind of empirical evidence, whether it be DPW guys saying, oh, we've had 10 breaks there this week, or, you know, the citizens calling you up and saying, hey, this is the worst road in the city, why don't you compare it to the other person who's claiming that they've got the worst road in the city? Or, you know, use the PACER ratings. You know, this decision-making should be based on some kind of evidence. And we're presenting to you, you know, the proposals we have, not only based on the evidence in the CIP from previous years, but also there's a value added of that 15% mobilization cost.
And that's the main attraction of Second Street, correct? I mean, it's a road that could be done,
Yes,
and it's a 15% value added.
correct. Certainly under no obligation to do so, and it is not as complained about. You're right, it's not as bad a shape, but we believe it can be done for substantially less, and I believe it was a 5-year projected CIP item.
Mhm.
But you're right, it is a very expensive project. Okay, so, major streets, page 78. So, again, we talked about this previously, the Genesee Street Bridge, $4.3 million, a significant portion of that is being paid for through grant money, which this community has been very lucky over the last couple of years of being able to get grant money for those types of things. I think we probably need to speak internally about various ways we could improve our chances for getting some of these grant funds. Ross, it was just the other day, we signed something for 3 different projects. Were those the other 3 bridges?
Yes.
Okay. So we are putting an application for additional funding for 3 other bridges in this community, which I believe would be similar in cost, about 5% of the total project. So we'll see if we get those. And then Genesee, you see the engineering cost there, $200,000 for the engineering on that road, with, it looks like anticipation of it being completed in the next year. Similar, Park Street, you see 2.65 for next year's budget. And then that's gonna be aligned with Pine Street in the park line number 9. Nepson, Saginaw to Oregon. 2029, did we move that around to Millenville that we're anticipating doing with them 24 to, no, am I thinking of 2 different areas? So anyways, that's the next major project out there. And again, I think this kind of goes along with the, I think we need to take a longer view, a 10-year view versus a 6-year view, but I think we need to hire an engineering firm to do that. So whether we can maybe find money in this year's budget, or maybe we just plan for that for next year. All right, I'm gonna go to parks, page 89, it looks like. All right, so we're in our last year of reconditioning picnic tables, and Brian, that's paid for by some group, isn't it?
TIFA 3.
We have the community center pavilion.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
One of the TIFA's funds that, or pays for that portion of the picnic tables,
It's
and we
what?
do get money from that.
For 3.
That's what, year 3 or year 4 of
Year
that?
4.
Yeah.
And that was done because during the large festivals, we were having to go to all the parks, take all the picnic tables out of the parks and put them in the downtown during the festival. This way, with all the new picnic tables that have been purchased, we don't have to do that anymore.
Okay.
Community Center Pavilion, that's in support of the pickleball courts and also the summer programming. Disc golf course, $80,000. I think that's a little bit on the expensive side. I think it could probably be done for less than that. M24 tunnel.
I'm not sure who was first. Commissioner Petrie?
I'm wondering about the disc golf course, why we're having it on the same street less than a mile away from another disc golf course.
Well, I don't know if the site's been chosen for the disc golf course.
I thought it was by Chatfield. Where is it gonna be?
Well, so I think there's a couple locations. Rodney, has there been a specific location chosen for this yet?
No.
So
If we don't
there's,
have a location.
Just on the actual project sheet, it says 18 holes on the Oakdale property. Made it seem like it was north of Chatfield.
so there, yeah,
South of Chatfield.
so there's 2 locations. There's the north of Chatfield where the pump track was originally proposed for. And then there's also the area to the east of where the pump track's now proposed for, south of the railroad tracks. But I think there's it's got a lot of heavy brush through there, and I think it would take a lot of work to kind of sort out where all the holes would go. I'm just saying, I'm not taking an opinion one way or the other, I just don't think it's gonna cost $80,000. But I think this is part of the money that was originally allocated from the original marijuana funding.
From the parks,
From the park board.
from the park, through the park board. First recommended to the city commission. Commissioner Grady?
On project 2300, it does say north of the parking lot of Chatfield. That's my suggestion. I've presented that idea basically to the park board in November, I think would be the process I went through. I have walked through that area. I just can't imagine. And I play disc golf all the time. I just can't imagine a disc golf course on the south side of the railroad tracks there. And so I offered 2 proposals, just for your information. I know this will come up again later, but the first would be to do 18 holes in conjunction with Mott Community College in that big open space where people park for the 4th of July. Of course, it would require a lot of collaboration with Mott, but if we can go and maybe clear out some of the trees that have fallen over and just died there, they might go for it. The other option would be just north of Chatfield. It's a much smaller property where the pump track was going to go. 18 is not gonna fit there. It would be, when I play, we just throw like that tree to 3. I played there for years. 7 comfortably. There's a trick with disc golf. You can put a basket and you can throw from 2 different locations. So you could make it more, but I wouldn't. 9 at most, not 18. And so,
Sorry, for what it's worth, I think, the funding is the first step, and then somebody's gonna have to put together the plan to then come back to the board and say, here's how we anticipate doing it. And then I think that's where, and hopefully you'd be part of the discussion if this is something that concerns you. But it's not something that's written in stone at this point. I think we're just looking for funding to do it.
I know, but people are gonna look at us funny when we say we wanna spend $80,000 on a disc golf course. They're gonna look at us like we're crazy. And am I wrong? I mean,
No, I
they're
agree.
gonna look at us like we're crazy.
Madam Mayor.
They already look at me like.
Yeah, they do. Sorry.
Commissioner Swindell.
So, the group that did our first, the Crampton Disc Golf Course, has done lots of disc golf courses for lots of different municipalities. Ours was certainly the least expensive that they've done, in 80,000. They've done some much more than that. The county spent a lot of money on Twardowski, way more than 80,000. The county had to do most of the work, a lot of the work in the clearing and things. It's not, we just did the first 11 holes so cheaply with all the volunteer work and the way that the park is open and different things like that.
Do you recall how much under budget that was? It was quite a bit.
From what Rose said, or from what?
Well, what was proposed, yeah.
What they bid was what they billed.
No, I meant from when we started to talk about it, so before even I guess.
How much of the marijuana money was set aside for disc golf?
1/3 of it. It was over $100,000.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
even
And
at
we
this,
spent
It was a lot.
15,500.
I think even at this $80,000 price tag, they're still under the allocated amount from the original marijuana.
Correct.
So I think there's still money that would be left over that is allocated but would not be spent. Is that?
So the first one at Crampton probably cost the difference between
15.5,
15.5.
because of all the volunteers and extra work. I knew it was a lot, I
What?
just didn't remember how much.
That'd be like one of the main draws of putting it over on this other property that already gets mowed, to be the same benefit that the park has. Not to mention how easy it is to play in mowed grass versus through like the thickest jungle we have in town.
Could be if we could get 18 in there, which is the main purpose of having an 18 hole, is so that we attract it.
Madam Mayor, if I could. So, Mr. Church, what would the process look like for choosing the location and kind of how many holes you're gonna do?
I think a first step would be getting the group involved, above Par Disc Golf, that designed the Crampton course. Maybe give them a couple options on property and say, hey, can you walk this and give us a proposal on how much it would cost to put 7 or 9 holes in front of North Chatfield, and or if we can work some agreement out with Mott on their property, if we could do 10 on that side and 8 on the other side of Lake Drive. I think that would be our first step. I'm not a disc golf design person. I think we need to get the experts in here to talk to them about what they think, and they were great to work with. They've got to put something together for us, I'm sure.
Commissioner Glissman had her.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just my opinion. In my opinion, it's my least favorite thing for the parks. It was done on the cheap, and it looks like it. I've walked through it, and I don't even see it lasting very many years without having to be improved and updated. And if the county just put one in for the residents of the county to go to, and they did a expensive, splendid job on it, I don't see why we should actually have to have another one. Now, like I said, it's my opinion. I'd like to see us wait on this at least a year and see the need for it, get some data. When I've walked the disc golf park, I haven't seen all that many people. I haven't seen it crowded. And when they do come, I notice that they bring their own coolers, so you can't say they're gonna be spending a lot of money in the city. They bring their own coolers with their own drinks and their own food, and they do come from all over, I will say that. So unless they decided to have lunch and then have dinner somewhere in town, I don't see it as a real draw for making extra money in the city. I think that there's other things that we could do and other priorities with the money. But of course, it would have to take somebody who voted for it before to change it. But that's my opinion. I just think it's a waste of money.
So I actually,
Petrie.
I just wondered about Mott and Chatfield and if they feel great about a disc golf being there, because people are going to play during school hours. Do both schools feel that, I mean, did we talk to them about it?
Conversation's been set up yet, has it?
Well, that's what I'm wondering, if,
No,
You would know that. Rodney?
I've not spoken with Chatfield or Mott. Now, the property north of Chatfield is obviously the city owns that. But there's no discussions with Mott yet about it, or Chatfield.
No. Mike? you
sorry, yeah, I
wanted
was
to
just gonna
talk?
say that I actually see a ton of people out there, Ms. Lisbon's point. But this kind of gets my mind going to, you know, every community I've ever been in, it's like, well, we need a skate park for the kids, because the skate park is where the kids will go and not get in trouble, right? Skate parks are very expensive, and frankly, I think they're very dangerous. I see a ton of kids throwing disc golf. It's good exercise, it's mountain nature, it's not very dangerous. And I think there's an app that people have used for this specific course, which of course they're not all using. But that would be at least a good starting point for you to see how many people are just using the first disc golf course. And I think from a perspective of how many people are going to use it, for how long they're going to use it, you know, I'm thinking it's more like 50,000, but 50 to 80,000, I think it's a worthwhile investment. You may not use it, but I think the younger crowd, younger than me, they're going to use it.
Watch it.
Hey, you know what? Anytime you don't go out there with Mr. Brady and I, we'll throw some discs around.
I'm a good disc thrower.
But I think at the very least, I think Mr. Church's point is well taken, that, you know, these people, if they're interested in it, they can walk the site, they can tell us how many holes might fit on various locations. Then we bring it back to you guys and say, here's our estimated cost, here's the number of holes, here's where it's gonna go, do we have your approval? All right.
Just one last comment. I think, you know, the cost situation, I think it depends on the tee pads. You know, the baskets are the baskets, right? Those are all brand new, state-of-the-art baskets. Where the cost will depend on how nice of tee pads you want. And I don't know, Commissioner Clifton, what is what you're referencing. You know, we may not use railroad ties. If they use something else as a border, it may cost a little more. So I think depending on how nice of tee pads you want is kind of driving the cost of the disc golf course. And so Womac's point, you know, I think 40 to 50,000 is probably a little more realistic for that area. The 80,000 came from, originally, I was thinking, when this was brought up by the park board and approved for the marijuana funding, was the south of the railroad tracks. There's a little river that goes through there, and we would need bridges constructed over that, and those are not cheap. So, north of Chatfield and the Mott property, we would not need bridges, so I could see that being a lot cheaper, you know, 40, 50,000, probably more comfortable.
I can speak to that. At my school in North Branch, we have an 18-hole disc golf course, and there's a sign that tells you where to throw from, but there's nothing on the ground. There's a brown patch where people have thrown from. It's just the one at Crampton Park is like, you know, really, really high end as far as what it is. Even though it was cheaper, it was a lot of volunteer labor, but certainly not necessary to have concrete and pavement. And part of the benefit of disc golf is it's putting a couple posts in the ground. If you want to get rid of them, if you want to move them, if Mott decides, you know, a 10-year deal is fine, but after that, let's reevaluate. Honestly, it's $1,000 a hole. It's not. It could be very, very cheap. Which for parks is great because we spend $20,000 on like a slide.
Commissioner Petrie?
I just wondered about the parking then. If it is in that location, would they park at Chatfield School during Chatfield hours or Mott School? Or do we have an agreement with them about parking? Because people would be,
You're way ahead of it. We,
Yeah,
we
way
would, we
ahead.
would even have to say like, yes, there's money there before we even start having.
The bike
Well,
trail
it's
works,
same.
so this would be the same as the bike trails.
After this section, I'm gonna
So we
request
have
a
a question.
break.
Okay. So
Some
we
people
have had-
are in need.
We've had preliminary discussions about parking, but it's further down the road. So I'm still Parks and Rec. So let me finish this up and we'll take a break. So, let's see here. So 26, 27, you see the City Hall expansion, Community Center expansion / City Hall. That was approved of by the Planning Commission, but it was moved out to 30/31. Cardio fitness equipment, we're trying to bring some of our equipment in that building up to modern standards, which they haven't been done in, how long, 10, 12 years, Rodney? The partitions, is that for the bathrooms?
Yeah.
Okay, so some of those partitions are in poor shape. Trash receptacles downtown, this is something I've asked Mr. Church to put together for us, and again, this is something that eventually will come to the commission, probably the DDA as well. We'd like to kind of have a unified kind of standard for trash cans and benches, and so they all kind of look nice and they all look similar. Problem with doing that, of course, is it can be expensive. So that's anticipated over a 3-year period. Pool tile work and floor refinish, that's done every couple of years. Perkins Playground, that's for potential phase 2, right?
Correct.
So Perkins Playground was worked on, I believe, last year, and they put in kind of a, what would you call it?
obstacle course.
Yeah, kind of an obstacle coursey.
Non-school course.
Yep, and so we've talked about, there's actually a pretty big green space there, and we've talked about designing a phase 2, which would be more neighborhood inclusive for the design, so that the neighborhood felt like they had greater control and say in what would go in there. And then the Kiwanis Playground, you see there, $1.25 million. I believe they're up to close to 900,000 at this point. And the discussions that Ms. Hannon and I have had is for safety and money control, that would be run through the city's budgetary process and our money control system. And it's going to be placed on city land as well, so.
Commissioner Brady, thank you for being patient.
Oh, you're welcome. I guess, are we trying to get through this so that we can take a break, or are we returning to the parks? I got a lot to say about the parks.
That's, I guess, the mayor's call.
I think we should take a break.
Okay, you got down like to the next 2 or 3 years out, and I got things here in the 25, 26, so.
Okay.
That's fine, let's take a short break.
You want to set a minute?
6:15 by that clock.
This is how I was reading it in bed.
Mike? Mike?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's very dangerous.
Yes, because the
Or
mayor and I.
a booster seat, one of the
we can't
two.
make eye contact.
Lay it on the ground. Thank you.
Don't scratch the carpet.
It can't get any worse, Josh.
Use your legs, not your back.
Also, you see the prayer.
All right, now that Jeff's left the room, let's talk about the real budget.
I don't know if he wrote it, because he probably, this is what I used to do when I was in the career business.
That was just a joke.
Okay, tell me what you're feeling.
Thank you. Are you my translator, my joke translator?
That was
Yeah.
his heart and soul. So I think that that's what he does. Josh just adds and says, this is what I want done. And the prayer is beautiful. It's amazing. I'm so glad he got done. Dad joke. My blood is red, white, and blue. So. Oh, cool.
I forget her name. The one who dressed up, the one who was famous for dressing up as a school.
But if you go on my Facebook today, you'll see a bunch
Second
of
week of May.
revolutionary
Second week of
stuff.
May. May 19th.
And this is the day that we.
Well, it has to be adopted in May
Okay.
for the city charter.
I'm gonna call the meeting back to order. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just got done through 26-27 of the park CIP, and Mr. Brady seemed to indicate he had some thoughts.
Tell us what page you're talking about.
I'm on page
No, I'm at
89?
Mr. Brady when.
Yeah, 89 is where we were,
89
right?
of 174.
When he's going through each item. That's all.
Okay, so, I think maybe disc golf courses was where the last discussion was, and M24 tunnel.
Okay.
I imagine there's some thoughts about the M20. See, I guess is some of that kind of icing on the cake stuff. So, do we want the icing? Do we not want the icing? Is the purpose of this meeting, Madam Mayor, for us to adjust projects on a timeline? Is it the purpose of this meeting to remove projects if we would choose to do so?
In my way, we kind of previously have done it, is we review it, they give us their explanations. I'm not sure when Mr. Womack would like us to remove a project, but that would take a vote, for one thing.
Or-
This is a public meeting, so we can do so, I guess.
And we would adopt this CIP at some point.
The CIP would be adopted, finalized with the second meeting in May.
Okay, so planning commission
But
has
also-
given it to us.
The planning commission, we had to bring this to the plan.
No,
You didn't review that the other night, did you?
Planning Commission adopted the
They did?
CIP with the one change.
Okay. And Tifa has adopted their budget.
So if any changes were to be made, would it need to go back
Here, yes,
to the planning commission?
or no?
What's been the tradition of that? They sent it back to the board for,
Do we went after?
The commission's goal right now is to get the fiscal year 25-26 budget adopted.
And as a part of that, we need to know what we want to do with the CIP items, because they're part of the budget?
The first year CIP.
Just the
The
first
first
year.
year CIP?
Yes,
Correct.
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And we anticipate the tunnel being completed in this year? So in another
There was a
location.
grant received for it.
Yeah.
So,
And so currently, there's chain link fences across it, which you can get past, but there's already some spray paint in there. So I like the idea of covering it with something. So far, we just are saying we would like some kind of artwork included in the tunnels. That's what this item is suggesting.
yes.
And we don't know what the artwork is, and we still haven't really resolved.
What type of artwork
What
we
type of
want, what
artwork?
we're looking for,
When-
with all of our city type artwork.
Yeah, and when the other tunnel was done, what was the process for picking the art that went into that tunnel? The one by the bike trails?
so I don't.
Rodney, could you answer that?
believe the
I don't
commission-
remember.
I don't believe the commission was part of that process. believe it
Was
was
that-
approved through either the Parks Board or just the Park staff.
I don't know.
Okay,
Would
so
be
Park Board only
Parks
meets
Board
in
either.
November, but,
I don't,
Can I speak?
yes, please.
So that project was, for whatever reason, our parks staff handled that, and took care of it. Maybe due to, because it was under the $20,000 threshold. I can't really answer you why that was done like that.
Yeah, I can't
This would
remember.
just be to approve the funding for that, and then we would come back to you guys with ideas.
Philosophy that if it is public property, it is not the right of the staff to make determinations about what art goes on public property. Public property is owned exclusively by the city commission. The problem, of course, is the last few times we've talked about art with this board, the discussion's been all over the place. So Mr. Atwood, you at least proposed a concept similar to what I believe Ann Arbor does, which is having an art board make recommendations so that the heavy lifting is not done by the city commission. Just in casual conversation, I've suggested that maybe we say to the Parks Board, hey, this is kind of your alley, why don't you serve as the art board as well? And here are the guidelines with which we want you to make determinations. They then could make a recommendation back to this board. But as far as funding it, yes, we need to fund it first, and then we do the what are acceptance.
So it can always be removed if you decide not to do it. Down the road.
I'm ready to go on to the cupola installation. I don't want to see it put on the pavilion. It's a metal roof pavilion. I can think of another location for it. There's a spot down across from 18 East Nipissing that's got like one of the more traditional cupola installation. I don't want to see it put on top of the roof there.
Wasn't that where, is that where it originally was, and that's why they want to put it back?
The pavilion is relatively new. It's site appropriate, but it's not going to look good in my opinion.
None of them
Well,
look good, in my
maybe-
opinion, anywhere.
The prairies and ponds.
They're
like-
ugly.
I'm sorry.
Is it the Prairies and Ponds Pavilion, or is that what you're?
It's the bike pavilion. It's the one where there's like a changing station, right where you kind of pull in behind Chatfield, behind Mott.
Where the tunnel is, where the bathrooms are.
Yeah, it's a pavilion, standard kind of park pavilion with a metal roof.
Mr. Brady, could we just ask Mr. Church kind of what the impetus of that was? Like the proposal?
I think I know, but sure.
I'm sorry, I just have
So what's the impetus of why they're choosing to propose to put this cupola where they're proposing to put it?
Well, if you guys remember, recently we restored all the cupolas in town.
Yes.
And we had an extra one for years. And when we got them restored, the 13th one that was sitting in storage, collecting dust, we got restored, and it's still sitting in storage, so we would like to put it somewhere. And as a staff, we thought it would be a good spot there. But
Well, there is a little bit of significance about that regarding the fact that the cupolas came from Dale property. So I guess maybe that, I don't know, that would be a thought process.
Yeah, I'm okay. I don't know if $10,000 is needed to put it somewhere. That seems like maybe a more expensive place to put it than, for example, at the end of downtown, across from 18 East Nipissing by the
Dog park?
at the far end of the dog park. There's a corner there where it could be, or perhaps where that suggested artwork was going to go, kind of like by across like Stonegate right there on DeMille Boulevard. I can just think of other places, and I don't know if it's appropriate to change the.
Wouldn't you still need the money probably allocated no matter where you end
Yeah,
up
so
putting
that would
it?
be my suggestion is allocate the money, and then perhaps at the next regular council meeting, you ask for a subcommittee to be formed to discuss the options of where you might want to put it instead. So I don't think Mr. Church is saying it has to go here for reasons. I think he's just saying, well, staff thought it'd be a good idea. If the council feels otherwise, form a subcommittee and bring back something to the full board.
Yeah, perhaps that's part of my talking so much during this meeting is I don't get a lot of opportunities to say I don't like that project until it shows up in front of me for a vote. And so maybe I'm using this as a little bit of an opportunity to give some of that direction of what are some of the things that I'd like to see. It's just hard because it's like project by project. I think the Parks Department does a great job, but we have a lot of parks. We just have a lot of parks, and we're gonna add, and in 26, 27, we're gonna add a Kiwanis playground, and in 27, 28, we're gonna add to the tune of $1.2 million
Commissioner
of,
Petrie also, Commissioner Listman also, that's right. Had her hand up. Under
When you're done.
yeah, you gotta be patient. You know the trick where you put your hand in that.
I've been doing that, babe.
There's a lot of park infrastructure, and in my opinion, not all of it needs to happen just because it could happen. I've got other ideas. I send Mr. Church ideas for the Parks Department quite a bit. I'm on the park board. I'm trying to steer, and this is one of my opportunities to kind of say whether you're going to, have money in the future, in the next 5 years. What kind of things do I want to see? If you want to schedule things out there for 29, 30, and shoot for a new board or whenever, that's great.
Commissioner Listman.
In defense of the cupolas, I absolutely love them, and they're all incorporated in our logo with a beautiful aqua color. If Commissioner Brady thinks that it's incongruent to put a cupola on the pavilion, thank you. Perhaps just a quick rendering of what that would look like. But I would definitely want to use it and get it out of the cemetery holding building and make sure that it's used. I think that it's one of the only things that I can point to right now in Lapeer that says Lapeer. And no other city has it like this. I think it's an important icon for the city and should be used. In fact, I was going to recommend that we build some more and put them in other places in the city.
Well, not to derail the conversation, but there's a giant blue sign out in front of City Hall.
That I hate.
If you see that, you know you're in here, right?
Yeah.
But I think.
Only if you're downtown.
I think my point stands though, which is if the board's wanting to see this cupola out in the community, you just don't like where it's at, fund it, and then form a subcommittee at the regular commission meeting, and then come up with ideas about where it should go instead.
Okay.
We'll fund it.
Is there any changing that needs to happen to the language that's on the CIP?
I don't think so. I mean, again, the CIP is kind of like a roadmap, but just like, everything else we do, ultimately it comes down to the final decision at the commission meeting. And then once you guys finalize that, I mean, unless, like Mrs. Listman wants to come up with more cupolas, we've run out of cupolas at that point. I would consider that CIP item fulfilled, and it would come off of the CIP at that point.
We should build a bell tower with a cupola on top. Like colleges have.
Does it come with its own hunchback of Notre Dame too, or?
Yeah.
Okay, if that's the understanding, I'm comfortable with that.
What was your next item for the parks?
Oakdale Trail Extension. And I would maybe defer to Commissioner Atwood.
Defer.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that at all?
May I?
Yes.
Again, I understand like CIP items are, budget for it, and then we get the plans and so on and so forth. I mean, I don't have a problem with this one, that there does need to be some clarification, because I know it's going by some wetlands. So I think, I don't know if that's gonna be a possible issue, in the future. I don't know if Rodney has an answer for the wetland area. I don't know if, I'm not gonna say the organization that might have to get involved with it, but.
Ronnie, do you want to comment on it, please?
So this trail extension that is in the process, I'm not familiar with it going by a wetland. This would be the southernmost section, kind of looping on the south end of the solar farm, heading towards the highway. So I don't think that would be an issue, with the
Well,
wetlands.
I was back there last night and followed the proposed, well, it's currently mowed, and it does get a little wet as the land kind of slants from the solar panels down, and then there's like a little hill on the other side, and it just creates a little bit. I don't know if it's a big issue if you just put, again, this is thinking farther down the road when it's actually happening, but fill and culvers in there, but I would just hope that like 40 is enough to do that.
They say it's about 50 grand a mile, right?
Yeah. I was at the meeting, and I don't remember if they talked about the low spot there. I mean, I love the project. I mean, it's you know, to extend the trail and stuff. So I mean, I personally don't have a problem with that. This is my only concern is the wet.
Okay. Maybe that would be taken care of in the planning. Commissioner Brady?
This is me again, maybe expressing my hopes and dreams for the future and trying to steer. So it feels, this feels a little bit of like a cart before the horse kind of project. They've already got a trail builder. We've got our trail builder who we've been working with closely, and he's already even to the point of like reserving time to do this project, which to me feels like a kind of a sticky situation to be in, because you know, I don't want to say no to a project with this person that we've worked with that's done all this, you know, that's installed this great stuff for us. But it's this is also a part of like a larger presented plan that it feels like it's being told to me that that's what we're going to do. And in the position that I'm in, that's not the position that I'm in. I don't want to be told, hey, this is how we're going to use the area around your solar panels that the city owns. You're going to do these projects. That's what it feels like to me. So this is like an extenuation of the trails that we already have, and then the idea would be to go down across to this neighborhood. See, these ladies weren't even at the meeting, which they could have gone to, probably, but
What, in the Oakdale Trail?
yeah.
We're not, we can't, as it is, you already have a quorum there.
So it's a little tricky because they can't necessarily get this information from anywhere else. But you can see over my shoulder right now, and it would go up here behind Stonegate and then to there. So this is kind of like being proposed, and here we are, like now at this point, being asked, hey, can you pay for that?
Well, it is city property, isn't it?
It is city property.
So we need to have a say in it.
Absolutely, but I feel like we're almost getting kind of pinched to the front end.
Mr. Brady, could I just jump in for
Yeah.
a second? So I've expressed similar concerns. I've asked about the history of how these trail extensions have occurred, and what I was basically told is two people went into a room, they shook their hands, and that was done. I don't play that game. You know, I was semi-joking earlier about one of the reasons I believe in bringing projects back to the commission for approval is, you know, vendor one could be my brother, vendor two could be my sister, and then it could be a third party. It's not unheard of for your brother-in-law to be a trail extender, but you are then the only sole bidder and contractor. I think, you know, for the future, we need to do a better job of, if it's the city's money and it's on city property, we should be following city policies.
Mhm.
Now, if that person is still the best bet and the best price, then maybe we go with them after commission approval.
And it's also like, what do we want to have happen? It's a balance between people bringing us ideas and us soliciting ideas. And I don't feel like, I don't know how many people here like asked for a trail extension, or if this was one that was just kind of put in front of us. This particular
Tifa,
one,
right?
I'm sorry?
Isn't this 40 grand from Tifa? Tifa approved this 40 grand
Yeah,
for
Tifa
this
doesn't
trail
get to
extension?
tell us though what we're gonna do, whether we're gonna build a project or not. They just provide the money. I mean, it's great, Tifa can give us the money, but like, so Tifa just decides they're gonna give us money to do this thing and we don't wanna do it? Then what happens? We say no.
Well, to be fair, it was also asked.
By who?
Them.
By who to Tifa?
I can't answer that question.
So
No.
just one minor point,
Can I see that?
and Mr. Brady, feel free to disagree with me on this point. Part of the philosophy of running cities is you kind of have to accept what's happened in the past sometimes. And you go and fulfill the promise of the work that was done previously. You know, I wasn't around when these trails started. I'm probably not gonna be around when these trails end. But are we willing to do our portion in the middle for the amount of money being proposed and the source of where it's coming from? Your philosophy may be different. We could also defer these into the future and let some other board maybe pick it up in the future if you're not willing to spend the money.
Sure. I like this one. It is close to the expressway. It's, if it follows the proposed path, it's not too close to the expressway, but it's a billboard. This is a billboard for our trails that people from Canada are gonna see. And so we need to be cognizant of the idea that we are now gonna advertise to, I don't know what the traffic on I-69, like what the numbers are, but if we do this, we are putting a billboard from Port Huron to Chicago to, I mean, this is like, everybody is gonna see that we have these trails. And maybe we want that, and maybe we don't. I'm just making a statement there. And when I look through in the city's non-motorized master plan, there are inklings of trails like this, but nothing exactly like this. When I look at the master plan,
When was that last updated?
Uh,
Non-motorized master plan?
this one, printed really small, it's pretty old.
Yep.
But that's the closest to anything is the non-motorized plan. It would maybe connect this down underneath of like the I-69 underpass. So this is the closest that we get. When I look in the master plan, this is not.
The parks or the regular one?
Sorry?
The parks master plan?
The Parks Master Plan, yeah. I'm gonna keep saying it until I see motion happen on it, is, we need to get back to our master plan, we need to make sure our master plan is what we want it to be, we need to have that 10-year guidance, 5-year guidance at least from a master plan. Otherwise, people are gonna come up with projects, and Lapeer is just the way it is. There's 40,000 people who use the city, and there's 9,000 people who actually live here. And so we can let them tell us what we're gonna do, or we can come up with a master plan that says what we're gonna do.
I'll just kind of comment that you can't update the master plan after every election cycle. It would just be cost prohibitive. I understand that you are trying to put your brand on the city, and I appreciate that.
It's due, though.
Sure, yeah, it's due. But again, this goes back to the, do we want to be known for our trails? Do we want to have trails available for our citizens? That's a policy decision for you guys to make. If you don't, take the money out, we won't do them. Or leave the money in and then be part of the guiding process for where they're actually gonna go, where you think it's best. You and I have talked about the area between the back, the southeast side of the Ponds and Prairies Trail, that could possibly wind its way up to the back of Crank Cycle instead, right? That would be $40-ish, $50-ish thousand versus the $1 million it would take to do it along Genesee Street. Is that better for us in the long term? And that was never part of the original plan, right? But now that we're in touch with the property owner, and they've conceded that they might be interested in working with us on that, that's why I'm saying, I don't believe you need to adhere 100% to the master plan. It's a guidebook. And then on a year-to-year basis, when you're doing the budget, that's when we say, you know what? We found this other alternative, it's 1/3 of the price, let's do that instead. But you're right, we probably need to sit down with staff and identify master plan this, master plan that, park trail this, park whatever, and see when was the last time we updated all these things, and then start identifying which ones need to be updated the most and which will have the greatest impact on our community. Somebody wrote that down, right? Okay.
See that again?
I would love, can you send me that?
You guys ready to move on from parks?
Oh, I don't know, let me check.
So for what it's worth, the pump track is probably a little unrealistic where it's currently at 27, 28. As far as I know, there's been very little, if any, fundraising that's been done for that. That's probably closer to a 29, 30, or 30, 31 project. But
Okay.
I've not heard from Mr. McCready.
City Hall expansion, we didn't really discuss that. I'm,
We moved it to 30/30 when the planning commission recommended moving it to 30/31.
yes, I'm aware.
But not the consultant, or not the engineer, right? Or
Yep,
whoever
so
it is.
30,000 we're proposing for this budget year. I think it'll be done for less, but we just don't.
Madam Mayor.
Commissioner Brady?
Mr. Womack, can you give me the brief explanation of what the survey does? What information will we get? You and I have talked, what information can't we get? What information can we get in-house to maybe put some of my Parks Department at ease?
Yeah, and so of course, we'll obviously try to do some things in-house, to talk about, what are our needs, what is our future staffing concerns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In Cedar, we didn't hire an engineering firm to develop possible sites, we just did that, in committee meetings. Because of course, who's gonna know the community better than the locals, right? But certain things such as, okay, you have X number of employees, they need X number of square feet for their desks. You have 4 buildings that are filled with paperwork, and we'd like to have all those in-house. We'd like to have part of it be a possible expansion for the rec center, which is why we've originally proposed it where we have. We need this number of square feet to be ADA compliant for election equipment, and having X number of people cycle through on election day. And we have to have a room that's dedicated for the chambers, for X number of seats for that purpose. Do we want to have a kitchen that would be able to be used for Little Timmy's birthday party when they rent out the space for the weekend? It's those types of considerations that at some point, I think we need to bring in architect, engineer, somebody to kind of just give us some basics. But the front end of the big work, we would try to do that in-house.
Okay, what about, so as this is a conjunction of an expansion of the rec center,
Yes.
are we, what's the justification for expanding the rec center?
Well, if you listen to the pickleballers, it's because they desperately need indoor space to play the pickleball. I haven't been around long enough to make a educated opinion on that or take an opinion on that. But I hear from staff, I hear from the public, that not only was it planned previously, 15 years ago almost at this point, but also there is an ongoing need for this type of indoor space. The center building, which has currently been used for swap meets and all sorts, I don't know if they're gonna be viable deep into the future. So are we gonna be planning for having a space that's indoors that could be used for swap meets? Apparently it used to be used for wedding venue events. It isn't any longer, it's not good enough shape. I also, from what I understand, there's just not a lot of big spaces available for wedding receptions, Little Timmy's birthday party, that type of thing. So it's a very multi-use space, which would take the form of kind of like a gymnasium. So it could be used for rec center purposes 360 days a year, elections some days, and other purposes other days.
Okay, so I see in Parks and Rec Master Plan, updated 2022, the city of Lapeer will offer a variety of recreation programs and events, but as a part of that, we're supposed to be coordinating with other recreation providers to prevent a duplication of services and avoiding unnecessary competition. So maybe to frame this off the pages, we've got a rec center that's competing and probably is going to be getting more competition. And how much do we want our rec center competing with those kind of indoor spaces? Birthday parties, soccer leagues, all this kind of stuff. So at the same time that you're saying we need to expand the rec center, I'm saying, no, you don't.
Well,
And just, that's where I'm coming, I'm one person, that's where I'm coming from. But I also, there's also like, to me, like a lot of reasons why that's just not, even if we wanted to, not the right location to do it.
sure.
So, what is, is the study gonna just justify what you're trying to do? Like, I could pay somebody to get justification for what I want, but can we also pay somebody to get justification for why we shouldn't do that? Like, is that gonna be included or no?
So let's be fair, I'm not the one saying we need to expand X, okay? The reason that's being proposed for a study, and I'm a straightforward guy,
Yeah.
there's no hiding, there's no politics here, is because we need somebody to come in, identify how much space we need, talk to the staff, talk to the elected officials, to find out, is this justified? And if so, what's the best bang for the buck? Where's the best location, and other things like that.
Okay.
It's also entirely possible, we budget the money, we sit down with everybody and we say, you know what, just from the in-house investigation, we don't think it's justified.
Can I ask a question? Who is saying that we need one?
Not to make light of it, but people are telling me, right? I hear this from the staff, I hear it from various members of the public. You got the pickleballers, you've got kids saying, well, I wish I had a place to hang out and play basketball after, or whatever. So I can't identify a specific person, and frankly, I wouldn't do this on the advice of one person. But this is just what I've heard from various members. Now, again, you guys are the policy setters. If you disagree and you don't think, then it won't happen. But I'm bringing you good ideas, what I've heard the public wants.
Commissioner Petrie?
I'm just gonna say, I knocked a lot of doors when I ran a year and a half ago, a lot of doors. Not one person said, Dan, if we could have a new city hall. Not one. Not one said, could we extend the rec center? Not one. And so I feel that this, to me, is not something that the community wants. I've not heard it from one person. Now, I can see why the staff would want something different, I understand. But I think that this is not realistic. I think that 30,000 right now is, my thoughts were exactly what Stefan's were. You can justify anything with a survey for what you want. And I just think right now that is money not well spent, especially since they pushed it down to 30-31. We're having this new event, or whatever they're gonna call it, a rec.
Smith Arenas.
Right, they're gonna call it that. That is going to provide a lot for the community, and it will be competing with the rec center. I'm concerned about that. I don't want it to be something that's, takes away from our rec center. But, I think we need to see how that goes before we spend 30,000 on something that, like I said, I knocked a lot of doors and not one person said, get in on that. It was roads and can you get rid of the marijuana smell? So that's my, I just think it's a lot of money. 9 million's a tremendous amount of money. 30,000 right now, I don't think we need to spend it on that.
So I'm not asking you to authorize 9 million, obviously, just
Right.
like
Well-
hold on. Just like 18 Epstein Street, we're gonna be looking for grants. This is not something that we'd be asking for a bond or anything from the public. I'm a fiscal conservative, we would need to find the money somewhere else, right? But, I bet you when you were knocking on doors, nobody once said, you know what we really need? We need a Vector truck. I bet you nobody said that to you. Now, your professional staff is saying that we've outgrown the building, we could be better ADA compliant, we can create a positive atmosphere for the entire community, in a value-added type of proposition, because we already have the land, we already have the parking lot. So, look, again, you guys are the policy setters, if you disagree with that, that's entirely your prerogative. But the staff have brought it to you because they've heard from the public, and they think it's a good idea.
Commissioner Brady?
Can I make a motion, Mayor, to remove that? Is that appropriate?
So I don't know what's in.
Ramona is shaking her head no.
How about we need the appropriate action to take that off this year?
So what's been done in the past, from what I understand, is at a subsequent follow-up meeting, we take any items that were controversial or somebody indicated they wanted to vote on it, and we bring that to you kind of boo, 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 boo. So we don't drag out meetings forever and ever.
So that would be May.
Yes, that would be a no answer. That you can't at this time, I
Thank
guess.
you. Is it acceptable to take that course of action?
If that's the wish, you can bring forth a motion, make sure that you work with Ramona and Mike.
I feel like I'm back where I started
Get
just a
on the
minute ago.
agenda.
But it's a different motion now. I don't know what the
You
motion
would
is
have
that I want to make.
Not tonight,
Yes.
but in the future, at a future meeting.
So after this meeting,
But these are just projections, you're not spending this money at this time.
I don't ever
You're-
want to spend it. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm not gonna, you know, I haven't really stuck my foot down real hard, but this just doesn't make any sense to me. Somebody, you know, 3 years from now, the commission can do it.
So I kind of asked to move the 9 million from 26, 27 to 30, 31. So we could get the study done, to see if it's even, if you could even do it. But also, it's kind of twofold to see what the community felt about what we came up with.
The other thing is,
So that would give it time to, you're picking on the rec center and I will fight you. That's just a joke. Basically because I grew up playing rec sports because I was homeschooled and there was nothing available. So Smith, and if you've ever been to a homeschool sporting event nowadays, it's massive. It is blown up. I mean, I feel bad for the schools. I'm like, they're missing out on all this talent. But they didn't have that when I was a kid. So the one thing you gotta consider with the rec center is, you know, the trails, tennis, disc golf, everything the rec offers, the parks and rec, is quality of life. And if you've ever played the game Sims, that is very, very important to people finding identity, creating social groups where they can meet up and connect. It's kind of a third place, you know, where you can go and make friends. Some people use it as stress relief. So quality and quality of life is just as important to me as infrastructure and roads. And it's one thing they have to consider when you're looking at the CIP and the rec center. So is quality of life. And by the way, we still have cities nowadays that are still building a multi-million-dollar, I believe Kentwood is just broke ground in their rec center facility. So I understand that it cost us, but quality of life is also very important in this cement pavement world that we live in. That we need green space, that we need that community outside of our car. If that makes any sense. I'm just joking about fighting you, but I was just saying that
I don't disagree with you.
the character I am today is actually because of the environment I grew up in, playing rec sports. It added a lot to my character, and I just feel for kids that don't, you know, have that. It brings me joy when I see kids out disc golfing, when I see them playing basketball, sometimes yelling at each other. When you see them out on the pump track, or not pump track, but the bike trails. So just keep that in mind. That's all I'm saying.
I also think that we should be focusing more on the 25, 26. I realize that some of these items go out, like for study. I mean, next year will be 9 mil, and we just talked about moving that out. But we're never gonna get through this tonight. My goal is to be out of here by 7:30, which I doubt if that's gonna happen. I hope we're out of here by 8. Commissioner Brady.
The only way I'm gonna get behind the study is if it includes, you know, the possibility that we find out that we don't need this. And I also think if you wanna say City Hall, period, that's one thing. If you wanna say community center expansion / City Hall, that's another thing. I don't know if the build, like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Are you adding a second story? Are you adding a gym? What is this even gonna be? Like, I haven't been sold this thing at all, and I don't like it, and there's no reason for me to spend $30,000 on it if I think it's wrong.
Well, this goes back to the trusting your staff. The staff have brought you an idea of what they think they need. And, you know, the staff needs to be shown that there's at least a possibility of this occurring, because there's no point in us spinning our wheels forever and ever.
That's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to keep you from spending any time or money thinking about this thing if it's not gonna happen. I'm one person, that's fine. There's 5 of us. I don't be like, can we get some intent of the commission on what we want or not? Or do I have to follow through like with a motion sometime later on?
So, you know, again, Ms. Petrie indicated that she just didn't like the location.
Well, no, I don't see the need for any of it. So, and the location would be just a factor that it would not be conducive to all that traffic right there. So I don't understand, can't justify that kind of spending, and I don't know that our residents would be like, yeah, that's how we want to spend our tax dollars.
If I could continue my thought. So Ms. Petrie has previously indicated that she didn't like the location. Mr. Brady's indicating he's not quite sure what's being proposed. You know, again, if this is a hard no, then we just kill it down, we're done. But, you know, staff have proposed, we need more space. We've got way too many people in a tiny little building. We own a pole barn, which is not secure, it's not weatherproof, and we keep important documents there. We own a building by the Amtrak station, which is currently vacant. There's all sorts of things that need to be looked at from the perspective of right-sizing the city buildings while doing something good for the community. That's really what we're talking about here. And again, I get that maybe there's some things that need to be worked out, but that's never gonna happen in this room. That's gonna happen as part of subcommittees, ongoing conversations, and potentially at some later date, the commission would approve a study with some group that would give us these types of answers from the professional opinions. But from the perspective of what the mayor said, yeah, we're not talking about the distant future, really, as part of today's conversation. I think what we're gonna need to do is, as part of the budget discussion, because really we're talking about 25, 26, is we're just gonna have to have some straight up yes and no votes on some of these things, because this is not gonna solve the situation. And then we just stick that as part of the budget for next year. And that'll give us an answer about whether we wanna do this in the future or not. So, Ms. Sanchez, would you note that that's a question that needs a yes and no vote in the near future? Mr. Brady, were there other things?
I'm satisfied with the 25, 26.
Okay, the rest of it? Okay, accepting the 30,000 for the study that you want to have a yes and no vote.
Commissioner Petrie, you had a question?
I just wondered, did we ever, or are we going to finish the pavilion downtown, the farmers pavilion? We were gonna do some things to that to improve it and get it ready, and as far as I know, we didn't, but are we, or?
It's in the current budget.
It's not part of this discussion, but yes.
Okay, I just wanted, I didn't see it, so I wanted to make sure.
Spring is almost here.
All right, I believe public safety is next, page 118. So I would note that the parking lot, which is the one back behind the fire station, we're having ongoing conversations with the county. We think we might be able to broker a deal in the near future. That has not been finalized yet. They also have had new people elected to their boards. So sometimes finding that sweet spot where everybody can agree is difficult. You see the first year there, firefighting hoses and nozzles, building signage. You know, I think branding the city is important. I think that's the only buildings. Are there any other buildings that don't have appropriate up-to-date signage? So I think this might be the last one.
I also think it's kind of important because there's the animal shelter and there's 911.
Commissioner Glisman. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to ask for the 25,000, do we get an electronic sign for that?
Oh, no.
Because I really think
That's
that in front of
triple
the
that.
police department, it should be an electronic sign.
no, thank you.
So I would be against an electronic sign, not just because it would be triple the cost, but because I just don't think the messaging is there that's necessary in an electric sign for public safety. Yeah, we investigated that for the library.
Debatable.
I like the way you're thinking. Just kidding.
For example, when I'm in some other cities, and we might have this problem too, it says, look out for deer, don't veer for deer, or maybe you're just gonna have on that day you know, not only you're welcome, but it might have the temperature or whatever, or a message about this weekend fireworks. You know, just something that the police department would want to put out for safety. I don't know, he's the chief, he might have some really good ideas.
Yeah, that'd be great in front of a new city hall. Yeah, yeah.
$9 million made me faint. So I don't know, what do you think, Chief Howe?
Well, yeah,
Go ahead.
honestly, this isn't my project, this is Chief Boat's project.
Oh, well, shame on him. Okay.
So I'll divert all of that to him.
Chief O, do you want to speak your thoughts on that?
Sure. The electronic sign was posed. Me personally, as one half of the public safety building, I could not justify it on the fire side. We do not have enough messaging on the fire side to where I feel would actually make a direct impact. The signage that is proposed is a new monument sign that does match the rest of the city buildings, something similar to what's at the wastewater treatment plant. Also, the signage does enhance some of the way signs on how to get into the building. Quite frequently, we have people go to every door besides the correct door. They try to go to either the fire staff door, they try to go to the police staff door, because our current signage above the public entrance matches the brick face color. So if you're not really paying attention, you just peek up and it's all the same color. So that's a sign project.
Madam Mayor.
Commissioner Brady.
So does this include the road sign along with building signage?
Correct.
Okay, and is it just the front door signage, or is there more?
Yes, it's the front door signage. It would be signage above the fire station bay doors to clearly say, hey, this is the fire rescue side, this is the police side. And then the most expensive part of the project is that roadside monument, what they call a monument sign.
Well, given that it's covering more than one item, I don't think that's a whole lot to, not all, it's a little lot. But it's not just a sign outside in the law.
So, one thing I would point out is the heavy rescue vehicle 2627, 1.18 million, is that the one we've already ordered?
That is the one that has been already paid for.
But it gives me the opportunity to say, Ms. Hannah and the fire department have come up with a funding plan for future purchases, which I love. Because I don't like the idea of coming up with $1.1 million just for, out of our pockets. So we're kind of pre-funding that as years go on.
Madam Mayor.
Commissioner Brady?
So, police vehicles are covered through a rental agreement.
Motor pool.
Motor pool rental reimbursement, but
Yes.
the fire vehicles are not. I assume.
They were not, and I don't know why. The city, for the past, I don't know, 20, 50, however many years, whenever a fire truck needed to be replaced, the city would come up with the cash to fund those vehicles. And they were never included in the equipment rental rates.
I assume the chief's personal vehicle, well, maybe not personal, the chief's vehicle and fire inspector, those are all motor pool vehicles?
Correct.
Okay. This may be more for the budget. What I'm noticing is that, like, when the guys go on fire runs outside of the city, which is about half the time, we're getting reimbursed about $500,000 a year for those fire runs. But we're paying $700,000 or $800,000 for the guys, $1.2 million for the truck, another $1.2 million for the truck. It just seems a little imbalanced to me. Maybe that's not a CIP issue, but I just don't want to miss that when we get to the budget. Like, what is the agreement that we have with these townships? And how come when they do a fire run, we don't seem to make as much money as it's costing us to do the fire runs?
So those contracts were predating myself as well as Chico, so we were not involved in the negotiation of those contracts. Mr. Vogt and we've discussed that when those contracts come up, that we need to make sure that the rates that they are charged recover the equipment as well as the time the city spends.
And do you know when those are? You're doing such a good job. Did I tell you that already? I like her.
So we can go home?
Yeah, sorry. Do you know when those contracts are coming up?
Perhaps before midnight.
Yes, they're staggered. You have one coming up in about a year and a half, one that is out to 27, 28, the other one's out to 28, 29. And also, we run predominantly in the city, it's not the townships.
From what I saw on the 23 report, it was like 225 in the city and almost like a little more than 200 in the townships, including like the mutual aid runs, which a lot of them were to Elba. It just it seemed like. So your opinion is most of the runs are city runs?
Most of our expenses are within the city, correct.
Okay.
Factor in just calls for service, our public service events, our community outreach, our fire inspection, we're predominantly city-based fire.
Okay, but like fire runs, is that spread out or is that?
No, I would say the city is the majority. I mean, just, I would take this week alone, we ran 28 calls in the city and 0 in the townships this week.
Okay, that was helpful, thank you.
Any other questions regarding this section?
I was moving on to sidewalks, page 135, I think.
Yeah.
So this one's pretty simple. You see $50,000 a year has been allocated
Yes or
for
no?
sidewalk.
I'm sorry, can we go back?
Two.
Just questions about the Flux cameras, just because we've gotten a lot of questions. I have questions about it, not that I,
If you've gotten letters, we should share them with Mr. Womack so that the rest of us can read them.
The one came through from Ms. Sanchez.
yeah.
Well, you said you've gotten letters, it made it sound like you'd gotten
No, the
several
letter
letters.
that we got,
Oh,
and
okay.
then people can sound off and that. I'm just saying, the presentation left me with questions. So like when he said there will be different charges if it's an MDOT street, I just would like, this is the first year, what will the next year be? Because you can't just stop, I mean, if we do it, it's.
Sure,
So
yeah, so
I
there's a
think-
subscription, but it's gonna be less than the 25,000. Chief, you know what
It
that
could be about 18,000 a year for 6 cameras.
How many?
6.
And
6
that's
cameras.
including if they're MDOT?
Correct.
He
So
said
when
it'll
he
be-
said the increase in the NDOT, he's really talking about the installation.
Oh.
If they had to
The
put a
initial
special
install. So he's got to, because they have to pull additional permits and there's some additional cost to it. That is what he was referring to on that.
It depends on-
Are you comfortable
Mr. Brady?
talking more about the cameras? I mean.
Sure.
When you say that's 6 is new to me. I don't know, like where are they?
Well, I wouldn't really want to put too much out publicly where they're going to be. They're going to be, I mean.
Just generally,
You know,
like, because people think
high
they're
traffic
pointing
area.
into their bedroom is what I'm reading out there. They're like,
High traffic areas, I would like to get some down by the commercial districts where, the mill, where majority of our shoplifting calls and stuff like that take place. Anything close to 69 would be a good venue for cameras as well, so coming in and out of the city.
Have we had
Yeah.
many stolen car things that you've solved here in Lapeer, or? I
Well,
just-
see, our guys don't always run around, running plates, you know what I mean? So they're not, when you think a police car is behind you and you think know your life story, that's not really the case, right? They're probably just going to another call or whatever. So we don't recover a whole lot. I mean, other than if we know it's a stolen vehicle and it's coming into our city or something like that, or coincidentally, we made a traffic stop on the vehicle and it's stolen. This program or these cameras would let our officers know right on their desktop in their car, hey, a vehicle just entered into your city, this is what it looks like, this is the plate, it's registered as stolen out of this city. So that would increase dramatically for us, those types of arrests. If somebody's coming in a stolen vehicle into our city, chances are they're probably not here they're not probably generally a good person, and they're probably not coming to the city to make it better,
Not only that, if it's a stolen vehicle, it could be a child abduction, it could be
Could be a missing,
anything.
right, right.
And if
Could be
you
a
could
missing
save a
person.
life with child abduction, or some elderly person that has dementia so bad, that's driving down the wrong side of the road,
Absolutely.
which has happened, not necessarily here, but just in the county next door. Commissioner Brady.
My understanding is, we could achieve the same ends if we were to just park an officer at the I-69 interchange and teach him how to
Be a speed
run
demon.
every plate as fast as he possibly could.
Coming in and out of the
What a
city.
waste.
Right, like,
All day.
so it's the
Oh, yeah.
same job that a human could be doing, but just better,
Way better.
way better, and, okay. There is a lot
You'd
of
never
mistakes.
be able to
cheaper.
catch everything.
More, yeah.
Was that
Once I
partially a
get the
joke?
camera. Must be.
No, I think people just have a misunderstanding about it, maybe that's just, I mean, that's how I
They're
think
scared
about it.
'cause it's
You could
something
set
new
somebody there and have them run
technology.
plates, all day, every day, day and night. We could do that, but that's gonna cost
You
a lot
don't
of
think
money.
we can legally?
You
Like,
know-
are you allowed to run plates just because you feel like it?
Yeah, if somebody's on a state roadway, absolutely.
I've even seen where they
Commissioner
like are
Wilson,
attached
yeah.
with the cars and you can go through a parking lot reading plates. That,
Correct, there is that technology too.
Better have a
That's not
sense of
what we're
humor.
looking at.
Okay, Commissioner Klitzman, you did have your hand up.
Thank you. Do you know if there's any of these cameras on 69 already?
Mhm.
They are, okay. And secondly, are you getting any personal flack to your office about it?
No, matter of fact, I was down, no, not in the office, everybody's on board internally, but.
Yeah, I mean residents calling?
No, matter of fact, I was at the Hunt Club yesterday down in Metamora, and I had 3 or 4 guys come up to me and say, that is great, that's awesome, that, it was total supportive, and these are, you know, pretty conservative guys, old guys that you would think might not think that way, but man, they were like, man, that's great, you know, if we can get that technology here. So, I've had nothing but positive, just being honest.
I did bring an article today, and this dates, the crime dates back to 1990. And the reason I'm bringing it up is it's about Paige Winkowski. She disappeared on the expressway back in 1990, and she was about 30 years old. She was a school teacher. I can identify with her because way back then I was like 30, school teacher, and her father worked with my father. And she's still missing today. So my question is, could the cameras back then, had they had the technology, save her life?
It's hard to say. I mean, if she got into a vehicle and somebody got the description of the vehicle or got a plate off the vehicle, definitely.
They did have a description of the vehicle stopped next to hers, but they could never find it.
Right.
So, anyway, this breaks my heart. I identified so much with it, and I'm thinking about if the camera can save a life, maybe we better do it. And I know I've got people who are against it, but, yeah.
Well, it's technology, it's something new, and people aren't always comfortable with that. I mean, when we talk about privacy, I mean, and I wish he would have touched on it a little bit more. I mean, none of this information is sold anywhere. It's dumped out of the cloud in 30 days. If our officer puts something in there, he's gotta have a complaint number, or she has to have a complaint number, or a reason why they're looking for this vehicle. And if they don't, that triggers that, because then that'll go to an administrator of the program. They'll see like, okay, nothing was put in here. We'll make contact with that officer. Maybe we start an internal on it as to whose plate is this you're running? Is this, you know, an ex-girlfriend or whatever? You know, so there's some safety in it. I just think people just don't really get that. And you'd be surprised at what we can get on our computer already. It's not, you know, we trust our officers to do a good job. We trust their integrity. That's why we hire them, and trust them to do the right things. So.
Commissioner Atwood, you started your
Yeah,
question?
just to piggyback, that's more of a comment, it's, kind of piggyback off what Commissioner Glissman was saying. It's one of those things where you don't want it until you need it, right? And I'm sure people are aware when we have a crime happen in the city, our detective is going around looking for houses that have
Had cameras, yeah.
cameras on there. on their,
Business.
doors or
Doorbell.
businesses or, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just saying, there's ways for the government to find you. And usually it's right
You've been
here,
bad.
it's right here in our pocket.
Yeah.
And I understand the pros, I understand the cons, I understand the fears of, you know, invasion of privacy and all that. But again, my mentality is, I don't want it until it's needed, and by that time, it might be too late. You know what I'm saying? If it saves one person's life, or, you know, is a crime deterrent, you know. It's one of those things where you gotta weigh the pros and the cons.
A lot of communities have, I mean, I think now they're pushing almost 200 police agencies in the, or 200 municipalities in the state of Michigan already have them, and it's growing, you know. I think almost everybody in Genesee County, pretty close to everybody has them already. I don't want us to get behind the 8 ball in this technology, and, you know, all of a sudden, we're getting hit with all these crimes because they know. I mean, criminals aren't stupid, and they get the police reports, they sit down with their attorney and they go over, how did they figure this out or whatever, and they talk, you know, so, I just don't want us behind that 8 ball.